88. The reception. Author's note: since this story has an M rating, I have decided to go ahead and write profanity as it comes up, no more F hash and K and such. I have set up an account with and will set up a link once I post something there. Now a few people have asked if the story is coming to its end. Well, yes it is, but it still isn't there just yet. Expect this story to end somewhere between 100 and 120 chapters. XXXXXXXXXX. Given her normal concerns for security, Mizuki Kushina had decided that the mansion would be off limits to all those who did not already live there. Instead, the reception would be held outside. Many round tables were set up with 8 places each. The food was the gourmet and the best that could be provided. A small stand had been set up where the band would play. An area was cleared for dancing. After nightfall, a fireworks display would be put on for the entire village to enjoy. And of course, there was an open bar serving an endless stream of beer and sake. One thing that could never be said was that Kushina worried about cost when it came to her son. Immediately upon the ceremony being completed, the bar was opened. A couple people managed to get there with an indecent amount of speed. Sake. Kiba and Jiraiya both yelled at the same time. Jiraiya looked over at the young ninja. Hey kid, I remember you from last night. Kiba snorted. Yeah, I remember you too, Jiraiya-sama. Pretty sad, an old guy like you having to bribe women to be with him. Jiraiya smiled as he collected his bottle of sake and began to wander off to talk to some of the beauties who were here. Weddings were among the best places to get lucky. Maybe, but still not as sad as a young guy complaining to his dog that he's a virgin. Kiba began to choke as he couldn't come up with anything to say. Virgin, huh? A feminine voice spoke from behind. He turned around. There was Tayuya standing there in a cream-colored kimono grinning at him. Oh Kami, just take me now. Kiba muttered as he picked up his bottle of sake and downed about half of it in a swig. It was high quality and strong, he could feel it burn on the way down. Tayuya looked at the bartender. Sake, and don't bother with the cup. She then looked back over to Kiba. So you're a fucking virgin, huh? Kiba growled a bit. No, I'm not. She brought the little ceramic bottle to her lips and tossed most of it back in one shot. No, huh? Then name one girl you've been with. Kiba blushed a bit. He put the empty bottle down and ordered another one. He was already feeling just a little warm. I'm just waiting for the right girl. He dropped his eyes to the bar. Tayuya finished the sake and ordered a second one herself. Well, maybe you'll luck out and find someone drunk enough that she doesn't mind that wet dog smell. Bite me, he muttered and started on bottle number 2. XXXXXXXXXX. A large table had been set aside for wedding gifts, and it was loaded down with all sorts of goodies ranging from fine china to simple wads of cash. A few people, however, insisted on giving their gifts directly to the happy couple. XXXXXXXXXX. Inuzuka Sume, Kiba's mother and head of the clan, handed them a small box with a pink bow and air holes. Congratulations and best wishes for many, many pups. Here, you might want to open this now rather than later. Hinata took the box and opened it. A little gray puppy with large brown eyes looked up at her. Oh, how adorable, Hinata squealed. Naruto smiled. Arigato Sume, I know how rare it is for your clan to part with any of the dogs from your kennel. It was true, the Inuzuka clan bred the finest dogs on the continent. There was a huge demand for them, but the clan never sold any of them, and only rarely offered them as gifts. Sume barked and laughed and gave him a rough bow. It is my pleasure. Not only are you the Hokage but my son's friend and teammate. Oh, what a cute puppy. Alyssa came over on the run. Can I hold him? Smiling, Hinata carefully handed the dog over to her. Of course. Alyssa held the tiny puppy up close to her face. He licked her nose and the little girl laughed in delight. Oh, I love him. Naruto gave his new wife a questioning look. Hinata smiled and nodded. Alyssa-chan, Naruto asked. Would you like to be the one to take care of him? Really? Alyssa asked excitedly. Naruto nodded and gave her a serious look. I'm sure mom would be fine with it, but it's a serious responsibility. He will depend on you and you must take good care of him. I will, I promise. Alyssa laughed and hugged her new pet to her. Oh, what's his name? Sume smiled at the little girl. He is called Chikai. Naruto smiled. He is called Little. Does that mean we will have to change his name if he gets as big as Akamaru? Alyssa looked extremely happy. Hello Chikai, my name is Alyssa and I promise to take care of you from now on. The puppy yipped and wagged his little tail in apparent agreement. XXXXXXXXXX. Here you are, I hope you'll put it to good use. Kakashi smiled as he handed them a large orange book. Naruto accepted it with an amused look while Hinata was frowning. Well, thanks Nisan, nothing says good luck with your marriage quite like porn. It's adult literature, Kakashi grinned. It's the hardcover collection of the Ika Ika series volumes 1 through 10. Hinata managed a slight smile. Thank you Kakashi-sensei, I promise we will find a use for it. I am sure we can put it to good use in the fireplace. XXXXXXXXXX. Congratulations on your wedding, Tamari said happily. She handed Hinata a small velvet case about a foot long and a few inches wide. It's a ceremonial fan. Hinata opened the case and took it out. It's exquisite. Thank you Tamari-chan, I love it. Meanwhile Shikamaru presented his gift to Naruto. It was a small book with a plain brown cover. Naruto read the cover. How to deal with your wife's mood swings. Naruto just looked at Shikamaru. Trust me, you'll need that before long. Shikamaru said simply. XXXXXXXXXXX. A tipsy Jiraiya handed him a large orange book. Here you go kid. Be sure to use it. Jiraiya began giggling as he headed back to the bar. Naruto turned to his wife and held up the large orange-covered tome. Look honey, book ends. Hinata shook her head and took the book from him. Look Naruto-kun, kindling. XXXXXXXXXXX. The meal was soon being served. The wedding party was seated at two large tables that were located right next to each other. It was a fine meal and the adults were drinking ceremonial sake while the children had tea. Hinata had taken a tiny sip of sake for the ceremony but was now drinking tea, as were Misaki and Aoi, Shinzu's very pregnant wives. Kushina was extremely surprised to see Anko also drinking tea as well. Anko, I'm surprised that you're not having any sake. Kushina commented. I would normally expect you to have had at least a couple bottles by now. She was seated to Shinzu's right like always. His other two wives were seated to his left. Anko gave her husband a quick glance and he gave her just the slightest of nods. Anko smiled over in Kushina's direction. I've decided to give up drinking alcohol for a while. Kushina quirked an eyebrow. Restraint was not something she'd come to expect from Anko. Well, I think that's a fine decision. How long is a while? Anko had a huge grin. Oh, about 8.5 months. Everyone at the table stopped what they were doing and stared at her. Misaki and Aoi looked not only shocked but very unhappy as well. Kushina for her part was just staring in total disbelief. Are you pregnant? Anko laughed and gave her husband a kiss. Yeah, he knocked me up good. Kushina turned her glare on her brother. What the hell were you thinking? Shinzo gave his sister an innocent look. What? I thought my job was to have children, and she is my wife. Kushina quickly downed the cup in front of her and then poured herself another one. I think I'm going to need a lot more sake. XXXXXXXXXX. Following the meal, the band began playing and people began to dance. Naruto and Hinata had the first dance, of course, but soon others had joined them. XXXXXXXXXX. So do you think our wedding will be like this? Haku asked as he held his dear one close. Gabriella smiled and put her head on his shoulder as they slow danced. I doubt it will be quite this grand, but I know it will be wonderful. I want to give you the wedding you want. Haku spoke seriously. I want you to be happy. I will be Haku, just as long as you're the one I marry. XXXXXXXXXXX. Tayuya had sucked down 10 or 11 little bottles of sake, she had lost count. As she was leaning against the bar and feeling no pain, from where she was she had a nice clear view of the dance floor. There were her teammates dancing close to each other. The happy fucking couple. I guess the stupid bitch was smart enough not to let him go. With her alcohol-soaked mind she thought how unfair it was that some girls got everything. Some girls really did get it all, they were born rich, beautiful, and with a powerful bloodline. And as if all that weren't enough, they also seemed to get the best guys. Fucking princess, she muttered drunkenly. What? Kiba asked blankly. He'd stayed nearby drinking with her. You say something. Dance with me. She staggered a couple steps away from the bar. What? Kiba asked dumbly. She reached back and grabbed him around the collar, yanking him forward. I said come dance with me, you stupid fuck. XXXXXXXXXX. She got him out to the dance floor. She then leaned into him and they began to lurch about, not really in time to the music. Kiba was happy to get his arms around her and feel her close. He liked the smell of her, the look of her, and the feel of her. He let his hands slide down from her back to a spot a bit lower. He was already more than a little warm from all the booze, but now he was feeling much hotter. You're really beautiful, he said simply. She looked up into his blank gaze and laughed. You're fucking drunk. So are you, he answered. And you're still really, really beautiful. She looked at his face, he was way too drunk to hide anything. She could see that he wanted her and wanted her badly. The fact he was grabbing her ass was also a sign of that. Normally she would shut him down, and possibly hurt him. But at the moment she wanted to be wanted. She slid her hands into his shirt and let her fingers slowly dance across his chest. She could see him shake a bit at the feel of her touch. She put her face next to his and her lips by his ear. Kiba, wanna know a secret? She whispered teasingly. What? He grunted. She whispered slowly and thickly. I used to care about this boy named Sakin. I wanted to make him happy and he would ask me to do all these nasty little things to him. I would make him very happy. She laughed and she could feel him shiver again. XXXXXXXXXX. Yugito stood near the dance floor watching the couples dance. She had received a few requests for a dance but had turned them down. The truth was, being a guest at a wedding was not a situation she was used to. She wasn't completely comfortable in social situations like this, but it felt kind of nice. Out on the dance floor, Naruto was having a dance with his mother while Hinata danced with her father. She admired the ease with which he moved on the dance floor. She had him practice the sword just about every morning and could see those moves transferred to the dance floor. She couldn't help but wonder what it would feel like to dance with him, even just once. But as much of a stranger as she was to social customs, she still knew better than to go up to the groom and ask for a dance. Except for this one short interlude, all his dances were reserved for his wife. She wasn't jealous, she actually liked Hinata a great deal. It was obvious just how deeply the two of them loved each other. Hinata made him very happy and she would never do anything to interfere with that. She knew she could never act on these feelings inside of her. But she was glad for the feelings, and for the foolish little dreams they inspired. XXXXXXXXXXX. The dancing continued into the late evening. Most of the guests remained to enjoy the food, drink, and music. Before too long, the happy couple excused themselves and took refuge inside their home. XXXXXXXXXXX. Inside their room, Hinata's wedding kimono had been carefully put away. She had washed away the makeup and let her hair down. As she stepped into her husband's embrace, she had on nothing but a simple undershirt. This has been the happiest day of my life. She sounded absolutely content. Naruto chuckled as he gave her a kiss. Does that mean it is all downhill from here? She giggled. Of course not, silly, from now on we get to live our lives together as a family. It's what I've always dreamed of, Naruto-kun, and there's nothing I want more. He nodded, but looked just a bit sad. I'm sorry we can't have a honeymoon. Oh, I understand. You're the Hokage after all. But as long as we're both in the village, I'll get to see you, and that's enough for me. Outside they could hear and see the fireworks beginning. Naruto had a reminiscent grin. You know, Sarutobi told me once that a Hokage's life should be like a fireworks display, a slow and majestic rise until reaching a peak and then a magnificent and glorious sight before fading away. Something about his words gave Hinata just a tiny feeling of dread. She looked at her husband and squeezed him tight. You have only just begun your ascent, Naruto-kun. Nodding, he leaned down and kissed his wife passionately, as outside the fireworks blossomed, and disappeared. XXXXXXXXXX. The next morning. She woke up with a splitting headache and a parched throat. She was just sitting up when she noticed a warm body lying next to her. She opened her bloodshot eyes and saw Kiba lying in her bed. He was asleep, but there was a grin on his face. It took her another moment to realize that they were both completely naked. She groaned and shut her eyes. Oh fuck me. 89. 1 to go. The next 2 months lacked any great crises or desperate missions. Following their wedding, Hinata was assigned full-time to the hospital, where she would work at least until after her pregnancy was complete. Naruto was also staying put in the village as no missions requiring the Hiraishin came up. So he concentrated on his duties as Hokage and on developing 2 new jutsus. He was disappointed at the lack of fresh intelligence concerning Akatsuki. Jiraiya sent him reports that were lacking anything substantial. There were vague rumors, but nothing really concrete. Jiraiya had suggested scouting aim. Naruto in turn suggested turning the bathhouses into grocery stores. This was not to suggest that nothing of importance happened. At the beginning of August, within 10 days of each other, Misaki and then Aoi each gave birth to a healthy son. Shinzo decided to let each wife choose the name of the child. XXXXXXXXXX. Keisha, Misaki said happily. His name is Keisha. The 3 of them were alone in her hospital room, and Misaki was enjoying this rare monopoly on her husband's attention. Shinzo looked at his newborn son. The little guy was sleeping peacefully in his arms. It was amazing and humbling to him to have a son. During his long years in the granite quarry, he had given up all hope on ever becoming a father. Now he was holding his little boy. Kuki had told him what it had felt like the first time she'd held Naruto. Now he understood. He loved his son completely and with his whole heart. But he could already see that there would be complications. Are you sure you want to name him that? Shinzo smiled and spoke with a light-hearted tone. I'm not sure that's the best name. It has many different meanings, a lot of them not so good. It can mean despise, or ignore, or neglect. Misaki frowned. Are you the sort of man who would treat his son in such a manner? Never. I will love and take care of all of my children. I see. Misaki couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. I suppose you only despise, ignore, and neglect your wives then. Shinzo looked at her in honest surprise. What are you talking about? I have always treated you and Aoi well, haven't I? You are never cruel and always polite. I admit that. But then again, you are just as polite to the servants. If a stranger saw us together, he might think me your servant, but never your wife. Shinzo frowned. You can't complain about that now. I have never lied to you about what I wanted or expected. I never told you that I loved you, only that I would take care of you. I know that, she said bitterly. But I still thought you might share my bed on occasion. She looked at him pleadingly. Am I so ugly to you that you find just sleeping with me repulsive? No, it's nothing like that. You're a beautiful woman, and I am fond of you. Fond of me, she repeated dully. Yes, that's fair. You are fond of me as you might be fond of an old pair of slippers. As he gently rocked the baby back and forth in his arms, he spoke in a calm but serious voice. You were not tricked into this, Misaki. The prenuptial agreement, the discussions with your parents and with the Hokage, you knew from the start what this was. You were not some helpless child being forced into an arranged marriage. I wanted children and you wanted a husband and the security of being part of a clan. That was the bargain we made, and I cannot see how you can condemn me when I have lived up to my part of it. Misaki paused a moment but then asked with a quiet voice. Why do you love her so much? There was pain and hurt in her voice, and more than a little jealousy too. They both knew which her she meant. Honestly, I don't really know, I just do. She looked at him and slowly nodded. I can understand that. I know what it's like to fall in love with someone without planning to. Her meaning was plain. Shinzo looked at her and simply didn't know how to answer. She was a good woman, and he really did like her. But he didn't feel anything more than that. Perhaps his son was able to sense his father's distress as he picked that moment to begin crying. Misaki held out her arms. Here, give him to me. Shinzo handed the boy over to his mother, who gently held him close as she sang him a lullaby. Soon their baby was fast asleep again. Shinzo stood there and smiled at the sight of his son peacefully asleep in his mother's arms. You're going to be a wonderful mother. She smiled weakly and nodded. Thank you, I am glad you think me good for something at least. Misaki. You're right that Keisha has more than one meaning. For instance, it can also mean heir or successor. Shinzo began to look extremely uncomfortable. He was born less than 2 hours ago. You don't honestly expect me to name him my heir, do you? She frowned. Of course I do, he is your firstborn son. By all tradition he should be clan heir. But Shinzo shook his head. That may be the tradition in Konoha but not in Whirlpool. My husband, the Hittite you wear, bears the leaf symbol and you are in Konoha. When Tsunade granted me the right to re-establish my clan, she promised me that I could keep all the Uzumaki clan traditions. There are a great many of them. One being that the Uzumaki do not name heirs until they are old enough to be ninja. Naruto was always clan heir. Kushina did not wait until he graduated the academy. Shinzo shook his head. My sister was acting as head of the Namikaze clan, and besides, Naruto was her only child. Designating him clan heir was a matter of course. I, on the other hand, am going to have to make an actual choice. I won't do that until my children have become ninja and I know which of them I want to lead. She looked away from him, feeling bitterly disappointed. You just want an excuse to make her child your heir. No, he said flatly. I want whichever of my children is best suited to lead the clan. And I won't know that for many years yet. He sighed. Is there any chance you would reconsider his name? She shook her head. You told me I could choose his name. His name is Keisha, or do you plan on going back on your word? But he simply shook his head, feeling defeated. I never go back on my word, for that is my ninja way. XXXXXXXXXX. The first year students were all gathered at the academy yard. They were sitting on fold-out chairs next to the family members who had brought them. This was a welcoming ceremony. Tomorrow would be their first day at the academy. There was an eager buzz as children and adults talked to each other. One girl with light blue hair looked over to one light brown. Fumi, the blue-haired girl, called out. The girl looked over at her. What is it, Miko? Have you heard? The Hokage's little sister is supposed to be coming here today. Fumi rolled her eyes. I bet it's just a story. I mean, no way would the Hokage's sister be coming here. I bet she has all sorts of special trainers. No, she wouldn't. Miko lifted her chin and tried to sound very wise. I know for a fact that the Hokage used to be a student here. Nisan was in a class 2 years behind his and saw him plenty of times. Fumi waved that away. I still say the Red Death would never let anyone teach her daughter. Miko suddenly sat straight and looked frightened. You're not supposed to say her name out loud. Fumi smiled and rolled her eyes again. I don't believe those silly stories. Here, Red Death, Red Death. You said her name 3 times. Miko looked around as though expecting someone to suddenly appear. Fumi laughed at her immature friend. And see, nothing happened. There was a sudden stir. Oh look, the Hokage is coming, and his mother is with him too. A nearby adult voice said. The 2 girls looked in the same direction as most of the other people present. Sure enough, there was the Rokudime, and he was holding the hand of a little girl who was wearing a black bodysuit with a stripe of red along the side. On the little girl's other side was a woman in the same type of clothing with long red hair, a sword on her back, and a Hittite with the image of a whirlpool. See, I told you not to say her name 3 times. Miko sounded on the verge of panic. Fumi didn't say a word, but the blood drained from her face. As she watched, the Hokage patted the top of the girl's head and then walked towards the podium with a blonde kunoichi trailing a few steps behind. But what the Hokage was doing barely registered. What Fumi saw was Namikaze Kushina, the Red Death, moving in her direction. Fumi immediately looked away and tried to shrink in her seat. She forced her eyes to look straight ahead and nowhere else. Don't draw her attention, don't draw her attention, don't draw her attention. Fumi repeated the mantra again and again inside her mind and prayed desperately she could somehow avoid notice. Excuse me, but are these seats taken? She couldn't help it. She looked up towards the friendly sounding voice. And not more than a few feet away was a smiling face with red hair and a foreign Hittite. Please don't kill me. Fumi screamed and then began to cry. XXXXXXXXXXX. The next day, Alyssa found an empty table and sat down to have lunch. Most of the other students were looking at her and whispering to one another. With a sigh, she began having the special ramen Kasan had made for her. Her first day at the academy was not going as she'd expected. To begin with, everyone else in her class had been together for 3 years. They all knew each other and they all saw her as the new kid. Add to that, she was related to not only the Hokage but to Red Death. What had happened yesterday had been very upsetting, as that stupid girl had caused a scene for no reason. She couldn't believe that anyone could think such things of her mother. Big Brother gave his welcoming address, but the moment had been ruined. Being fourth-year students, none of her classmates had been there, but the story had spread like wildfire. About the only good thing that had happened at the academy so far was when Aruka-sensei had administered the entrance test. She smiled proudly, recalling how impressed he'd been with her, especially her taijutsu. Uncle, granduncle, and Kasan had drilled crane style into her over the summer. Hinata had been nice enough to take the time to show her a few Juken moves that could be incorporated. Nisan helped her with using feints to take an opponent unaware. Hiku had worked with her on throwing objects with both accuracy and speed. Gabriella had shown her blocks and counters. While Enko, well, she wasn't sure when she would use low-level torture techniques, but she appreciated the time. Tayuya wasn't one for taijutsu but was teaching her all about genjutsu. The end result was a fighting style that was a bastardization of crane with various other moves incorporated into it. Aruka had been very impressed and assured her she would do very well in the weekly spars. Her academic knowledge had always been fine and she could already perform the henge, so there was no problem with chakra manipulation. She had easily passed the entrance exam. Now if only she could do something about being a social outcast. Excuse me. Alyssa was brought out of her thoughts by a young girl standing in front of her with a tray. The girl had pale eyes that were a different shade from Hinata's, dark hair that went down to her shoulders, and a seal on her forehead. She was obviously a cadet branch member of the Hyuga. Ah, yes. The girl nodded to her politely. My name is Hyuga Rena. May I sit with you? Sure, Alyssa replied. My name is Namikaze Alyssa. As she sat down, Arena grinned. I know, I've heard about you from Hinata. The girl's lips began to twitch as though she wanted to laugh. Is it true you put the Hokage's hair in braids? Alyssa smiled. Well, he wasn't the Hokage then, but yes. I thought it was a good look for him. Maybe the first day wouldn't be so bad after all. XXXXXXXXXXX. He was led through the back entrance of what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse. Once they were inside, his guide took him to a well-hidden door. They began to descend a long flight of stairs. Sai looked at him with that odd fake smile. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. My master appreciates your trust in him. Ryuki shook his head. I don't trust him, but I am willing to listen to what he has to say. At the bottom of the stairwell, he was led to a large conference room. Seated at a long table were 3 people. They stood and bowed to him. Ryuki returned the gesture. Thank you, Sai. You are dismissed for now. Sai bowed. Hi, Danzo-sama. He exited the room. Ryuki slowly approached the table. It is not often I meet with 3 other council members in secret. Danzo looked completely at peace while Kaharu and Homura seemed to be ill at ease. Ryuki sat down at the table. Why have you asked me here? For now, the old ninja said. I wish only to talk. And just what should we talk about? Ryuki asked politely. Let us speak of the future, and of what is best for Konoha. XXXXXXXXXXX. Outside the warehouse, a hidden figure carefully slipped away. XXXXXXXXXXX. Yamato stood in the Hokage's office in his Anbu gear and mask. He had just made an oral report and also handed Naruto a document with 109 names on it. Naruto was looking the names over and carefully committing them to memory. I didn't realize Root had grown so large. Naruto said quietly. Officially, there are only 60 members in Danzo's department. I turned up the other names in my investigation. These other ninja have acted consistently in Danzo's interest even though they have no obvious ties to Root. They're Danzo's personal spies within the Anbu. Just great. With a simple jutsu, he set the list on fire and it was gone. Can you tell me if the list is complete? Yamato shook his head. I am sorry, Hokage-sama, but there is simply no way to know. Naruto nodded. And now Ryuki, Kaharu, and Homura are all together talking somewhere I can't see. Sarutobi had been able to use a crystal ball to personally spy out the happenings anywhere in the village. Naruto would have paid almost any price for the ability. Unfortunately, he didn't know that particular jutsu. Is there any way we could put surveillance equipment in his headquarters? Yamato again shook his head. I wouldn't want to try it, that place is too well guarded. Besides, knowing Danzo, he probably sweeps for surveillance devices regularly. If he found something, he would know he was under suspicion. Naruto was silent for a moment. You know what? I should just call the four of them into my office and ask them. It would be worth it just to see the look on their faces. Even though he had a mask on, Naruto could tell Yamato was blanching. I'm just kidding. This is nothing to joke about. Root in the Uchiha clan plotting is extremely serious. I know that. The problem is I don't know what the hell to do about it. If they were foreign nin, I'd have them killed or sent to Ibiki. If I had any evidence against them, I'd have them arrested. As it is, if I move against them without any evidence of their guilt, half the village would be up in arms. Treason is treason no matter who commits it, Yamato said flatly. Oh, I agree, but if I have the head of the Uchiha clan or one of our most respected Anbu leaders arrested without proof, people will think it's personal. Even worse, they might think I'm making a bid to eliminate opposition to gain more power. A hand's mission could solve this, Yamato said quietly. Naruto shook his head. I am not going to start ordering assassinations within this village. I am not going to become like the Tsuchikage. Whatever happens, I will deal with it like a Hokage. Beneath the Anbu mask, Yamato frowned. Can I at least ask to bring Kakashi-sensei into the investigation? Naruto shook his head. No, as of right now you, me, and Jiraiya are the only ones who know about this. I want to keep it that way for now. Don't you trust Kakashi? Yamato sounded surprised. I trust Nisan with my life, same as with my mother or Hinata or Shikamaru. It has nothing to do with trust. Danzo and Ryuki are both very intelligent, and Danzo is especially cautious when it comes to security. The more people investigating, the more likely it is to be noticed. For right now, I prefer to rely on you. Hi Hokage-sama. XXXXXXXXXX. Outside his office window, it began to rain. Naruto noticed and thought things looked miserable. XXXXXXXXXX. Hundreds of miles away, it was also raining. Soshiku approached the bodies of the two ninja he'd just killed. They'd had on black cloaks with red clouds. He supposed they were the Akatsuki that the Hokage had warned him about. He was willing to admit they were probably more powerful than Iwa Hunter Nins. But lightning killed them like anyone else. He stood over their lifeless, charred corpses. You should have just left me alone. Suddenly, the one with the mask lifted his arm and it shot out. The arm's hand gripped Soshiku's neck tight. Now Hidan, Kakuzu shouted. To Soshiku's horror, the other body suddenly jumped up to his feet. He threw a weird three-bladed scythe that cut deep into his right thigh. Hidan retrieved his weapon with a laugh. You're fucked. He licked the blood off one of the blades. Now I'll begin the ritual. Howling, Soshiku finally tore off the hand's iron grip and leaped back. He was suddenly scared. He had never before run into anyone who could survive multiple lightning strikes. He let the red chakra flow around him. His body began transforming. He didn't like resorting to this, the transformation was always painful, and when he did this, he always wound up eating whatever he killed. He howled at the pain. Hair began to cover him, his bones cracked as he grew a foot taller, his muscles hardened and expanded, his mouth jutted forward and his eyes sloped back, his teeth sharpened and his hands were claws. In short order, he'd turned himself into a monster, a very hungry monster. You survived my lightning, he spoke in a bestial growl. Can you survive being torn apart? Usually, when he said that even the most hardened ninja would run for their lives or begin begging for mercy, he had never before been laughed at. The one with the scythe had changed his look. His face was now mostly black and he seemed to be standing within a ritual circle. He took a long metal spike out. You've been a fucking bad boy. He drove the spike into his own chest. Now play dead. Soshiku was about to leap when it suddenly felt as though someone had stabbed him through the heart. He spat out blood and staggered a couple steps forward before pitching to the ground unconscious. The red chakra disappeared and his body soon transformed back to human. Kakuzu quickly checked to make sure he was still alive. Kakuzu nodded. We got him, the leader should be very happy. Whatever, Hidan said without interest. Now I must perform the ritual and beg Jashin's forgiveness for not killing the stupid fuck. Kakuzu repressed a sigh. So far as he was concerned, the ritual was nothing but a waste of time. But he knew better than to try and argue about it. He sat down and relaxed. XXXXXXXXXX. 3 days later. Soshiku's lifeless corpse was discarded and dropped to the ground. Pain's astral image nodded. 7 down, 1 to go. 90. The life and times of Yugito. 13 years ago. The 5-year-old girl stood rigidly at attention. She had just woken up and was dressed in a simply gray night shirt. She stood barefoot on the cold stone floor. She was cold and still tired, but she knew better than to say anything. In front of her was the man who controlled her every waking moment. He decided everything for her, from what she would wear to what she would eat to when she would be allowed to go outside. Junsaku-sensei was dressed in his normal Anbu armor and uniform. And as he normally did, he had on his mask. All the Anbu had masks in the form of demons or monsters. Junsaku's mask was of a red devil with a frowning mouth and 2 small horns. She thought it fitting as he never seemed to ever be in a happy mood. What are you? He asked, beginning the morning ritual. A weapon, she replied without a second's thought. She was so used to this she could have spoken his lines as well as her own without missing a beat. What is your purpose? To strike down enemies. Who do you serve? The Reikage and the village hidden within the clouds. Would you die in the service of the Reikage in this village? Yes, for I live only to serve and protect the Reikage in the village. Do you fear death? No, for death is no more than a part of life. It is as natural to die as it is to be born. What is it you fear then? Failure and dishonor. Are you happy? Her mouth opened and suddenly snapped shut again. He had never asked that before. Well, there was annoyance in his voice, but she could not read anything else. She swallowed. Forgive me, Junsaku-sensei, but I do not know how I am supposed to answer that question. I have not been instructed. Junsaku-sensei shook his head slightly. That is because it is a genuine question. I am not looking for a scripted reply but for information. You need only answer the question truthfully. She looked at him nervously. Will I be punished if I give the wrong answer? He shook his head slightly. For this sort of question there is no right or wrong answer. You may give one answer today and a different one tomorrow and both would be correct so long as they were each the truth at the time. Do you understand? She nodded ever so slightly. I think so. There was a long pause. Well then, are you happy? She thought about it very carefully. Not about whether or not she was actually happy, the answer to that was always no. But rather she tried to piece together what he wanted her to answer. She knew he was lying when he said there was no right or wrong answer. Just as she knew no one cared whether she was happy or not. Everything in her life was a test. Every action and every word was watched and judged. A fact that had forced to develop a sharp mind and even sharper senses. She made her decision and nodded. Yes, Junsaku-sensei, I am happy. He nodded once in acknowledgement and gave no other reaction. You have 45 minutes to wash yourself and dress. I have already set aside the clothes you will be wearing. I expect you to be seated at the table for breakfast in exactly 45 minutes. He made a hand sign and disappeared in a swirl of wind and fog. Sighing, she got moving to the bathroom. Another day had begun. XXXXXXXXXX. 12 years ago. The 6-year-old was walking through the streets of the village a couple steps behind Junsaku-sensei. On the rooftops and side streets 2 full squads of Anbu kept watch on their progress while trying to remain discreet. They were all but invisible to the villagers, but with her vision and sense of smell she had no trouble keeping track of them. She was allowed to train outside in the compound daily, but actually going through the village was a rarity. Everyone knew who she was. As she and her sensei came down the street, people ran to the other side. All conversations came to an abrupt halt as people stopped to stare at her. Their looks held curiosity and surprise and distaste, but above all they looked at her with fear. Junsaku-sensei, she spoke quietly. He did not break his stride but turned his head back to her a little. Yes. Why is everyone afraid of me? She couldn't see his face, of course, but somehow she got the sense that he looked uncomfortable. People will always fear what they do not understand. That is human nature. Before she could ask what exactly he meant by that, he turned away and picked up his pace a bit. Come, we cannot keep the Yondaime Reikage waiting. XXXXXXXXXX. Standing in the reception area, everyone around her tried to pretend she wasn't there. They weren't very good at it. She could see the secretaries and other civilians constantly glancing and then looking away. Normally with the Anbu there was always a trace amount of fear sent, even with Junsaku-sensei. Here the stink of fear was so thick she thought she might begin to choke on it. It was actually a relief to see the Reikage's office door open and Junsaku motioning her to come. As she approached the door, Junsaku bent down and whispered in her ear. Behave exactly as I showed you, and do not speak unless spoken to. Her answer was a quick and silent nod. She strode in the office and came to a stop 5 feet in front of the Reikage's desk. She gave him a deep and very respectful bow. Anbu trainee Niyugito reporting as ordered, Reikage-sama. He gave a slight nod in acknowledgement. Sitting behind his desk, he carefully looked her over. Whatever he was thinking, he hid it well. He had a lot of fear sent. His lips were turned down, but that didn't surprise her. People rarely smiled around her. So you are Yugito, the Reikage said neutrally. You are a very special little girl. Do you know why you are special? She noticed Junsaku stiffened just a bit. No, Reikage-sama, she answered truthfully. Again the Reikage seemed to study her. He came to a decision. You are aware of the seal written on your back. Hi Reikage-sama. You are what is known as a Jinchuriki. That seal was placed on you on the day of your birth so that a powerful demon could be locked inside you. And with those few words all semblance or order left her world. What? She felt a sudden mounting terror. Horrid images of a monster tearing her apart from the inside out filled her mind. You hold within you a demon, the Reikage repeated with great patience. To be precise, you hold the two-tailed demon cat Nibi. Because of this you will one day have great power. Power you will use in service to this village. Despite her shock, her discipline held, if only just barely. Hi Raikage-sama. XXXXXXXXXX. She was sitting on her bed with her knees drawn up and her arms wrapped around them. She was shaking and she was crying. She had a monster inside of her. A monster that had been put in her on purpose. She was so scared. There was a single knock and the door opened. Junsaku never asked or needed permission to enter her quarters. Even the knock was just done out of courtesy. Junsaku entered and shut the door behind him. He strode over to her bed and crossed his arms over his chest. Why are you crying? He asked sharply. You are being taught to be ninja. For a ninja to cry is shameful. What is the 25th rule of ninja conduct? Yugito quickly wiped her eyes and tried to bring her crying to a stop. No matter what happens, true shinobi must never show their emotions. The mission is the only priority. Carry that in your heart and never shed a tear. So stop your crying. He sat down on the edge of her bed. You have no cause for tears. Her head snapped back up so she could stare at his mask. What? I have a demon inside me. She could feel the panic rising up in her. Junsaku sighed and reached up to pull off his devil mask. The face he revealed was not a handsome one. It was the face of a man in his 50s who had seen and done many things and survived. His nose was large and stubby and his chin seemed to jut out too far. Wrinkles covered his face and there was a small scar just beneath his left eye. His hair was mostly gray but still with some blonde. The eyes were a surprise. They were a beautiful grayish blue. They held a startling clarity, as though nothing could ever fool them. When Junsaku-sensei looked at her without the mask on, she was always drawn to his eyes and always felt they could see straight through to her heart. So, he asked calmly, that was true yesterday as well. It has been true for your entire life. All that has changed is that you are now aware of it. Thinking about it that way did help a little, but only a little. What will happen to me? What will the demon do to me? Nothing, he said. So long as the seal is active and you do not voluntarily choose to release the nibi, the demon cannot harm or control you. A look of worry crossed his face. Though it seems likely the demon will be able to talk to you. Talk to me. She had images of a huge scaly beast with sharp claws and a mouth filled with pointy teeth hulking over her. Junsaku nodded. That is right, the demon will be able to speak to you within your mind. You may expect all sorts of threats and demands that you release the seal. But keep in mind that the demon cannot harm or control you unless you allow it to. It can't hurt me. She sounded doubtful. It cannot. Junsaku said firmly. The demon is the prisoner and you are its jailer. It would have been pointless to implant the demon in you if it were to control you. Why was it? She asked. Why was this done to me? He tried not to show it, but his eyes held sympathy for her and she could smell his concern. It was done so that you could one day use the demon's power to protect the village. You know that in the Third Great Ninja War that much of our country was overrun and this village nearly destroyed. She nodded. She knew all about her village's history. It is to make sure that such a thing can never happen again that the nibi was placed into you. Surviving in this world demands strength and sacrifice. All lightning nin are expected to make whatever sacrifice is required for the good of the village. In that Yugito, you are no different than me or any other ninja. We are all tools in the service of the Raikage in the village. She slowly nodded. I understand, she said quietly. I am a weapon and I live only to serve. She looked at him questioningly. Will the people I protect always be afraid of me? Yes, he told her truthfully. I told you that it was human nature to always fear what one does not understand. But perhaps in time some of them will lose their fear of you. Will you? She asked longingly. He saw her pain and reached out a hand to try and comfort her. But before he touched her, he stopped. She understood. I see, she looked away from him. She could smell his fear, it was faint, but it was there. He quickly put his mask back on and stood up. I know this has been hard for you, but I still expect you to behave like a future Anbu operative. No more tears. A ninja crying is a disgrace. She nodded but refused to look at him. I understand, sensei. Very well, you may have the rest of the day to yourself. With that he quickly departed. When she turned back around he was gone. On her bed were 10 boxes of strawberry pocky. Despite everything she smiled a little. Pocky was her favorite thing in the world. Whenever she did really well in a lesson or in training, Junsaku would reward her with a box. He had never given her more than a single box at a time though. Having him lavish so much of the delicious treat on her at once seemed almost decadent. She tore open one of the boxes and took out one of the thin bread sticks with strawberry icing. She was smiling because she was getting to have a whole lot of her precious pocky. She was also smiling because this was Junsaku-sensei's way of saying he cared without ever saying it. XXXXXXXXXXX. What are you? A weapon. What is your purpose? To strike down enemies. Are you happy? XXXXXXXXXX. 11 years ago. She was in a large underground chamber. A massive containment seal had been drawn up on the floor in the shape of a circle. The symbols glowed with a cheerful green energy. All around the perimeter of the seal sat 8 Anbu carefully maintaining the seal. She sat in a wooden chair at the very center of the seal with Junsaku-sensei. Try it once more, Junsaku told her. Hi sensei. She shut her eyes and concentrated. 9 sets of eyes watched her nervously. She reached down into herself and tried to draw out the power. She found it, hidden somewhere deep inside. But bringing it out was difficult, like drawing water from a very deep well. Nevertheless, she had her orders and so tried. Like the others in the room, he felt it, just the tiniest flicker of that power. From out of her hands and arms, a tiny film of red chakra began oozing out. Only suddenly to disappear as quickly as it had come. She opened her eyes and let out a weary breath. I'm sorry, Junsaku-sensei, but that's as much as I can do. I see, Junsaku frowned. Perhaps we're going about this the wrong way. Even after all these months of training, you're still barely able to scratch the surface of your potential. Let us try something different. I want you to take on a meditative state and see if you can contact the demon. There were gasps not only from her but from the other Anbu as well. You want me to talk to the demon? He nodded. I do. It is in the demon's own interest to give you power. If you appeal to its own sense of self-preservation, it may be willing to aid you. She looked extremely nervous. But what if? The demon cannot hurt you, Yugito. There is no reason to not make the attempt. She swallowed. Hi Junsaku-sensei. XXXXXXXXXX. She let herself fall deeply into the meditative state. She found herself in a peaceful forest. The air was thick with the scent of flowers and other plants. The sky above her was a tranquil blue without a cloud anywhere. In spite of the idyllic scene, she looked about nervously, wondering if somewhere in the forest the demon was watching her. Meow. She looked down to see a little gray house cat looking up at her with green eyes. Around the cat's neck was a leather collar. Oh, what an adorable kitty. She immediately picked the cat up and soon had the cat held with one arm against her chest as she pet the cat with her other hand. The cat soon had eyes closed and was purring, sounding very content. She leaned down and rubbed her cheek against the top of the cat's head. The fur was so soft. Looking closely, she noticed the leather collar. Do you belong to someone? The cat opened both eyes and looked up at her. She laughed. Well, since this isn't real, I guess you belong to me. I think I'll call you Precious. My name is Nibby. Ah, she screamed and immediately dropped the cat. She leapt back about 10 feet and pulled out a kunai. The cat meanwhile landed on all 4 feet. Nibby turned in her direction and sat down. What had seemed like a single tail turned out to be 2. Both tails curled around Nibby's paws as the cat calmly watched the terrified girl. Is something wrong? You're the demon, she cried out. The cat's head tilted a bit. Well, of course I am. Who else would I be? Yugito stood there eyeing this seemingly harmless cat while still holding her kunai. Are you going to try and eat me? I have eaten humans, but I don't really like them, too fatty. I like fish. Alright, this wasn't what she had expected. Since you're a demon, do you plan on hurting me? No, why would I hurt you? Because you're a demon. Yes, we have established that. I am a demon, now why do you think I would hurt you? She stared at the cat that was staring at her. She found the whole situation very, very bizarre. Isn't that what demons do? Humans. She could hear playful laughter. For such short-lived and fragile creatures, you really believe you know everything, don't you? There was more laughter. Listen carefully, not all demons are alike. Some, like Kyubi or Shukaku, revel in killing and destruction. Some simply enjoy existing in their animal form. I usually enjoy just being a cat, and occasionally taking vengeance on people. Vengeance, Yugito said weakly. That's right. I am a spirit of vengeance and I enjoy bloody revenge upon those who have committed some terrible wrong. I also really like just lying out in the sun. I see, so are you going to take vengeance on me for holding you prisoner? No, you had no choice in that. You are as much of a victim as I am. So what happens now? Well, you could remove my collar. Despite the strange situation, Yugito's mind was still sharp. The collar, it symbolizes the seal that holds you, doesn't it? That's right. Yugito shook her head. In that case, I'm afraid I can't remove it. My main duty to the Raikage and the village is to keep you imprisoned. Well, in that case, can you pet me? Yugito shook her head, not believing any of this. The terrible and evil demon that everyone was so scared of wanted to be petted. You want me to pet you? Well, of course. I enjoy it. Deciding this had to be the strangest moment in her very strange life, she nodded and put the kunai away. All right. She came over, knelt down and began petting the fearsome demon Nibby. The cat began to purr happily. Since you don't seem to want to harm me, can I ask you something? I will allow you to use my chakra. How did you? Yugito heard more good-natured laughter. We share the same body and mind through the seal. Everything you know I know. And just to save time, no, I can't hurt or control you unless you allow it, and yes, when you die I die, so I will do whatever I can to protect you. Thank you, Nibby. You are welcome, Yugito. XXXXXXXXXX. She opened her eyes and smiled up at her sensei. I did it, I talked to Nibby. The other Anbu began whispering to each other. Junsaku merely nodded. And what did it say? Her. What? The Nibi, she explained, is a girl. She said I could use her chakra and that she would try and protect me. I see, Junsaku said neutrally. Well, in that case, why don't you try and draw the demon's chakra once more? Certain she would be able to do it this time, she decided to milk the opportunity. Sensei, if I manage to draw the red chakra, can I have a special reward? When she did especially well, she would ask him for specific things as rewards. What would you like? Previous requests had been for stuffed toys and her own radio and CD player. Will you take me through the village and buy me lunch at a restaurant? Yes, I will, he nodded. But you will have to draw a noticeable amount and hold it for a while. Hi, Sensei. She immediately concentrated on drawing out the red chakra. Where before it had been like drawing water from a deep well, now it was like standing before a geyser. The red chakra flowed out. There were shouts of alarm from the others, and even Junsaku took an involuntary step back. Little Yugito had not only drawn the red chakra, she had fully transformed into a 10-foot-tall mini-nibi composed of it. The sense of power and of evil was overwhelming. Junsaku had felt this only once before. Mercifully, it was a mere fraction of what the demon had been able to produce. Are you happy, Sensei? It was Yugito's voice, but it had a deeper tone to it. Junsaku quickly nodded. Yes, very well done, Yugito. The test is complete now. Please let the power go. She immediately complied, and a smiling 7-year-old was standing in front of him again. XXXXXXXXXX. Unlike previous trips through the village, they were leaping across the rooftops. Yugito loved the village and wanted to protect it. At the same time, she didn't like the way people would look at her. So she had asked to travel across the roofs rather than along the street. They remained hidden from view. As they were passing through a neighborhood, she suddenly came to a halt. Something had caught her attention. Junsaku was forced to stop as well. He was surprised to see her standing near the edge of a roof. What is it? What are they doing? She pointed down to a group of 4 girls that were near Yugito's age. 2 of the girls were swinging a long rope around and around. The other 2 leaping up and down each time the rope approached the ground. What sort of training is this? This is not training, Yugito. These children are civilians, they are simply playing. Playing? Do you mean like what I do with my toys? She asked. That's right. She looked at the girls. They seemed to be having a great deal of fun. As she continued to watch, though, one of the girls tripped as she landed and fell over. This brought the playing to a halt as the child began crying. What was worse, she was crying where others could see. Shameful, Yugito remarked. That girl is crying, it's shameful. Yugito clarified. She is not a ninja in training, Yugito. For an ordinary child there is no shame in tears. Junsaku explained. A woman came out of the building the children had been playing in front of. She quickly went over to the fallen girl and wrapped her arms around her. Soon the girl had stopped crying. What is that woman doing? Yugito asked. That is called a hug. It is a way to show care and affection for someone. Junsaku answered a bit sadly. Yugito continued to stare down at the scene, fascinated by the sight of a mother holding her child. XXXXXXXXXX. At the restaurant, people stared as the 2 of them entered. No one said anything directly, but as usual there were whispers. Yugito did her best to ignore them and the fear scent. She absolutely loved fish and had some baked salmon with rice. Junsaku did not eat much himself but had 4 small bottles of sake. Yugito noticed. Do you always drink so much? Junsaku had of course removed his mask in order to eat. She saw his annoyed expression. You do not need to worry, it would take a lot more than this to leave me drunk. Why do you drink so much? He paused. It is medicine for the soul. He lifted his cup to his mouth and downed it. Will I drink like this when I am a ninja? He looked at her. Kami, I hope not. He quickly refilled his cup and had another drink. XXXXXXXXXX. What are you? A weapon. What is your purpose? To strike down enemies. Are you happy? XXXXXXXXXX. 8 years ago. They were on a wooded hillside a few miles from the village. Yugito was excited. Not only was this her initiation into the ranks of the Anbu, but it was the first time in her life she had ever been allowed outside the village. She had trained long and hard to master taijutsu, ninjutsu, weapons, and control of her demonic chakra. It had been very lonely at times. The only people she was around on a regular basis were the Anbu. They were comrades and coworkers, but not really friends. She had no friends, except perhaps Nibi. The only person in the world she was close to was her sensei, and even that relationship had a certain distance in it. She was eager to finally become full Anbu and a real ninja. She would be allowed to get her very own apartment and no longer be confined to Anbu headquarters most of the time. She would get to go on real missions and see the world. She would actually get to have a little bit of freedom. Junsaku looked at her very seriously from beneath his mask. Normally, Yugito, you would have had to have achieved the rank of Jonin and had years of field experience to even be considered for the Anbu. He sighed. But you are the most special of special exceptions, and so if you pass tonight's test we will welcome you into our ranks. I am ready for whatever test you have, Yugito said confidently. We will see. Junsaku looked into the darkened woods. Bring him out. From out of the nearby trees came two Anbu with a chained prisoner held firmly between them. The prisoner was gagged and was looking about the clearing, obviously terrified. Yugito was very surprised to see the man in ninja clothing and gear. Prisoners were usually forced to wear brown sackcloth. Even more surprising, she saw he had on a mist hideite. Junsaku approached the prisoner with a key in hand. We will give you a 2-minute head start. If we catch you, we will kill you. He grabbed hold of the man's wrists and quickly unlocked his cuffs and chains. He then stepped quickly back. Let him go. The other two Anbu released him. The man hesitated for just a second and looked about wildly, obviously thinking this some sort of trick. He quickly decided that he was wasting precious time and leapt away as fast as he could. Junsaku-sensei, what are you doing? That man is a spy from Mist. He was captured in our territory trying to steal one of our code books. He is a chunin and should be no match for an Anbu. He glanced at his watch. In 1 minute and 40 seconds you are going to go out alone and kill him. Kill him, she said dully. Junsaku turned to her. What are you? A weapon, she answered automatically. What is your purpose? To strike down enemies. For the first time in a long while she really heard what she was saying. Did you think those were just words? If you really do become Anbu, then a weapon is what you'll be, and this is exactly the sort of mission you will be expected to carry out. You will go alone, track him down, kill him, and return his hideite as proof. If you should fail, we will have to call out the hunter nins to try and prevent him from making it back to Mist. And should you fail, it will mean you are not ready to be a ninja. She stood straight and gritted her teeth. I will not fail, sensei. Junsaku looked back down at his watch. Time seemed to crawl by until after an hour or more he looked back up at her. Go. She leapt away and was gone. XXXXXXXXXX. Even with a full moon out, she relied mostly on scent to track him. It had turned out that he was pretty fast, a bit faster than she was. He was heading west away from the village and the roads. He might have studied the geography of lightning as he was headed into the most rugged and hilly part of the country. The terrain would give him his best chance to lose pursuit. But unfortunately for him, there were no wide rivers in this part of lightning. And even if he was faster, she knew she would outlast him. Her endurance was inhuman, literally, she could go days without a rest. After 3 hours of going all out, he was finally forced to rest. That was when she caught up to him. XXXXXXXXXXX. It was almost sunrise when she finally returned. She handed a bloodied mist hideite over to her sensei without a word. How was it? He asked her. He saw her look away and tremble a bit. Hard, she answered without detail. It gets easier, before long it won't bother you at all. She looked back at him. Really? Is that why you drink so much? Because it doesn't bother you at all. I drink for many reasons. Here, he held out a lightning hideite and an Anbu mask with a cat demon's image. You are now ninja and Anbu of the village hidden within the clouds. She took both items from him. Thank you, sensei. I am very proud of you, Yugito. His words made her blush with pride. Sensei, may I ask for a special reward? Yes, what would you like? She gave him a shy look. A hug. He stared back at her. I am not the hugging sort. Oh, she looked down feeling foolish. I understand. But how about we go back to the village and I will buy you all the pocky you want? She looked back up at him and smiled a bit. All right. XXXXXXXXXX. Are you happy? XXXXXXXXXX. 5 years ago. Being an Anbu had not changed her life as much as she had hoped. She had her own apartment and her own money. She got to decide what she ate and what she wore and had as much freedom as any ninja. But she was still lonely most of the time. Like Gaara in Suna or Naruto in Konoha, everyone in her village knew who she was. Unlike the two of them, she was never attacked or insulted or threatened. Whatever else she was Anbu, and you did not disrespect the Anbu. But if no one ever insulted her, no one ever approached her as a friend either. Also, unlike the Jinchuriki and other villages, her existence was not kept secret. The Raikage let the world know that his village possessed the power of the two-tailed demon. It not only acted as a deterrent to potential enemies but brought in many high-paying contracts. Yugito was kept very busy with training and with missions. She was never assigned a team. Once in a while she would work with Junsaku. Most of the time she was solo. She received only A and S-ranked missions. Many of them involving assassination or something else of high risk and difficulty. She did not object as the missions allowed her to travel and provided her with real challenges. In her foreign missions she had met a few interesting people and enjoyed the respite from always being feared. But she was never in any one place for more than a few days, and she was not the sort of person to approach others first. Her life was not all that she hoped for, but she was more or less satisfied. Even if she was lonely. Then she returned from a mission to Grass to be informed Junsaku was in the hospital dying of liver failure and asking for her. XXXXXXXXXX. He had always seemed so huge to her. She had always thought of him as large and powerful, as unstoppable as a landslide. Now he was lying in a hospital bed pale and sweaty. He suddenly seemed horribly frail to her. Despite his weakness, he smiled up at her. Hello Yugito, thank you for coming to see me. Sensei, what happened? He chuckled. All the sake over all those years finally caught up to me. The medic nins can do nothing for me. I do not have very long to live. He could see the misery in her eyes. Do not grieve for me, I have had a full life and I do not fear death. Death is no more than a part of life. It is as natural to die as it is to be born. She said blankly. He nodded. Yes, and it is pointless to fear what must be. He took a deep breath and with some effort forced himself up into a sitting position. But before I die, there are things I must say to you. I have had many regrets, Yugito, many things I have been ashamed of. And one of the things I regret most was how I treated you. Sensei, what are you talking about? You are the only one who ever treated me well. He shook his head sadly. No, I could have given you love, but I was always afraid to. I have always seen it as a weakness for a ninja. And knowing what your life was going to be like, I thought it best not to expose you to that. I thought it best that you learn to find satisfaction in duty and not in people. And I was afraid I did not have it in me to love a child. But now I know I was wrong. He reached out and put his arms around her. She stiffened, she was not used to having anyone touch her. But slowly she relaxed and accepted his hug. All those times I asked you if you were happy and you said, yes, I knew you were lying. But I convinced myself that you weren't. I wanted to pretend that you weren't lonely and unhappy. I wasn't brave enough to be a father to you, and for that I beg your forgiveness. She felt the comfort of finally being embraced by the one person she truly cared for. I can't forgive because you never did anything wrong. I know that you cared about me even if your way of showing it was to buy me Pocky. Every single time you gave me some or spent time with me, I knew it was your way of showing you cared. She hesitated. Junsaku-sensei, may I call you father? He smiled and nodded without letting go of her. I would like that, Yugito-chan. Father, the word sounded so alien to her, but it felt wonderful to say. Despite her best effort, she felt tears. She immediately felt ashamed of showing such weakness. Forgive me, I should not be crying. He looked at her and then gently shook his head. It is all right. If you feel the need to cry, then cry. I know how strong you are and it honors me to know you weep for my sake. His comforting words only made her cry harder. She put her own arms around him and squeezed tight. Oh father, please don't leave me. I am sorry Yugito, but that is not my choice. But whatever time I have left I would like to spend with you. XXXXXXXXXXX. He held on for 5 days. During that time she refused to leave his side. She was actually assigned in a rank mission which she refused. In the village hidden within the clouds, ninja did not have the right to refuse any mission. No one had the courage to tell her she had to go. In those 5 days she and her father talked and talked and talked, trying to make up for years of things that had been left unsaid. For this very short time Yugito thought she understood what it was like to be loved. Near the very end, Junsaku's skin had become almost yellowish and his pulse had slowed and he was constantly sweating and in pain. But he was ninja and kept his dignity to the very last. Daughter, he whispered into her ear. I want you to be truly happy someday. You deserve that, and you deserve to be loved. Promise me something, that if you find love and happiness one day that you will not turn away from it. Not even if it conflicts with your duty. That went directly into the teeth of everything he had taught her. But there was no way she could refuse. I give you my solemn promise, Tusen, if I find love and happiness someday I will not turn from it. With that Junsaku closed his eyes and found peace. XXXXXXXXXX. 5 months ago. She had never been to Konoha before. She arrived at the main gate where a pair of chunin asked to see her documents. She presented them, along with a letter of invitation from the Hokage. She had no idea what the mission was or how long it would last, but she would perform it to the best of her abilities, just like always. It was not hard to figure out where the Hokage would be. The Hokage Tower being hard to miss. In the years since Junsaku's death she had given up thoughts of finding love or happiness. For someone like her such thoughts were just foolish. She soon arrived at the Hokage's office and was greeted by his assistant. The Hokage has been looking forward to meeting you, Shizune said. I look forward to meeting him as well. She politely lied. If he was anything like the Raikage he would be a frowning and unhappy man who was fearful and distrustful. At least the meeting would be short. She would be informed of who her client was and the nature of the mission. Shizune waved her into the Hokage's office. Her very first impression was shock. Standing in front of her was a teenager who really looked like he was playing dress up in the robes of state. More bizarre still, he was smiling at her. Well, whatever her impressions, he was obviously the Hokage, and so she gave him a respectful bow. I am Niyugito of the village hidden within the clouds. I was ordered to report to you about a long-term mission. The blonde teen stood up and returned her bow. I am very glad to meet you, Yugito. I hope we can become good friends. Her eyebrows quirked for just a second before the calm mask returned. Friends. What sort of cage would say such a thing? She wondered if he was some sort of an imposter playing the role as a security measure. Even if he was, she couldn't call him on it. That would be rude. Well, I suppose that is possible. She said neutrally. Can you please inform me of who my client is and what the mission is? The blonde smiled. I am your client. I gave the Rakage 5 million ryu of my family's money to hire you as a bodyguard for a full year. She stared at him. A year. The Rakage sent me away for an entire year. Welcome to Konoha. She just stared at him and got the weirdest feeling that this was going to be a very interesting mission. 91. According to plan. Naruto was rather enjoying performing the wedding ceremony for his old friend and his rather troublesome bride. Tamari looked quite beautiful in her white wedding kimono with her hair long and her face covered in the traditional white makeup. Though not as beautiful as his Hinata-chan, the wedding at the Nara estate was smaller than his had been, but still pretty big with a few hundred guests attending. Asuma had been given the honor of walking Tamari down the aisle. Hinata-chan had trailed behind holding up the edge of the wedding kimono. Choji was standing next to Shikamaru and giving him moral support, while making sure he didn't make a run for it. Tamari looked at Shikamaru with love and simple joy. Seeing the happiness in her face, Shikamaru relaxed. He really loved her, even if she was scary. After both of them had sipped the ceremonial sake, Naruto looked out at the guests. Can any give just cause why these two should not be joined in sacred marriage? There was a loud cough and all eyes turned in surprise to a certain blonde sitting in the first row. What? Ino said innocently. I had to cough. Eyes quickly were turned back to the bride as her killer intent was suddenly raging. The fact that she was growling made some of the guests nervously check escape routes. Honey, Shikamaru said carefully. Please don't kill her. Killing a wedding guest is a bad omen for a marriage. Yoshino pointed out helpfully. With an act of will, Tamari brought her killer intent back under control. She did still send her soon-to-be husband a glare. Why was she invited again? Shikamaru sighed. Because I have known her since we were kids, she is a friend and former teammate, my best friend's girlfriend, and my mom likes her. Since there is no objection, Naruto looked directly at Ino, who continued looking sweet and innocent. Why don't we continue with the ceremony? As tempting as it was to run inside and grab her fan, Tamari decided it was better to just go ahead and get married. Fortunately for the innocent bystanders, nothing else out of the ordinary occurred. With a tremendous amount of relief, Naruto informed Shikamaru that he could now kiss his bride. As they kissed, Naruto declared, "May I present to you Nara Shikamaru and his bride Nara Tamari." XXXXXXXXXXX. The Nara clan was financially well off but not immensely rich like other clans such as Namikaze, Uchiha, or Hyuga. Since Choji was there and beef was being served at the reception, it was decided having an open bar might bankrupt the clan. Kiba was at the bar working on his second bottle of sake. Even if he had to pay, he was determined to at least really enjoy himself here at the wedding reception. He had after all not had much fun at the bachelor party, again. XXXXXXXXXX. Kiba was just glaring at Choji as he finished off his seventh plate of beef. You know, I thought Shikamaru's bachelor party was lame, but at least we had sake. Choji, this has got to be the worst bachelor party in the history of bachelor parties. Choji looked hurt. You don't like the food? Kiba rolled his eyes. The food's just fine, but this is supposed to be a wild night with drinking and naked dancing girls. Don't be so troublesome, Kiba, Shikamaru put in with a bored tone. Tamari threatened him about getting me drunk or having dancing girls. Choji shivered. That's right. Kiba eyed the one female who was at the private celebration. Well, maybe we could have one dancing girl. What do you say, beautiful? Want to put on a show for us? In the next instant, Kiba was lying on the floor clutching his bruised face and moaning in pain. Yugito bowed to the Hokage before stalking back to her position, standing guard behind him. Forgive me, Hokage-san. Naruto shook his head. Come on, let's get him to the hospital and make sure he doesn't have a concussion. XXXXXXXXXX. Kiba would have actually fantasized about having a hot blonde attack him at a bachelor party, but not like that. Suddenly he spotted a certain redhead heading towards the bar. Hey there, beautiful. Tayuya glared at him. Oh come on, Kiba grinned. You're not still mad, are you? XXXXXXXXXX. The morning after the wedding of Naruto and Hinata. Oh fuck me, Tayuya said dully. At the sound of her voice, Kiba stirred a bit and opened his eyes. I already did, twice. He was smiling up at her stunned face. Since you're awake, can you make me breakfast before we go at it again? There was a moment of complete quiet as she stared at him. Then. Ow, what the hell? Kiba complained and began rubbing his bruised backside after Tayuya had literally kicked him out of bed. Tayuya wrapped the blanket around her body and glared furiously at the boy sitting naked on her floor. Get the fuck out. Kiba got to his feet and began looking around for his clothes. Damn, I guess you're not the cuddling sort. Could I at least have a sandwich before I go? Tayuya began looking around her apartment. Where the hell are my kunai? He was forced to leap out her window with nothing but his boxers on as she threw kunai at him. I'll call you. Kiba shouted back as soon as he was out of range. XXXXXXXXXX. She ordered a bottle of sake before turning to look at him. Why the fuck would I be mad? Just because the whole fucking village knew about it by the end of the day. Kiba couldn't help but laugh. Well, come on, I mean they did see you hanging all over me at the reception. Tayuya gave him just a sliver of a smile. You know I brought my flute with me. Kiba suddenly paled and grabbed his bottle. I'll see you later. XXXXXXXXXXX. At the reception there was a band playing and couples dancing. Naruto and Hinata of course danced. She was about 5 months along in showing. Though she enjoyed dancing with her husband, she decided to sit for a while. Naruto in turn decided to continue dancing with a few others with Hinata's permission of course. He danced with Alyssa, his mom, Gabriella, Tayuya, Ino, yes, Hinata was okay with it, and even had one dance with the bride. So Yugito should not have been surprised when he approached her with a smile and an extended hand. Want to dance, Yugito? Despite watching him dance with so many partners, it had somehow never occurred to her that he might want to dance with her. Her heartbeat picked up a bit and her cheeks darkened a couple shades. Thank you, Naruto-san, but I've never really danced before. Still smiling, he reached out and took hold of both her hands. Then you're way past due, come on, it's not that hard. She tried to protest but did not really fight as he led her out onto the dance floor. And shortly the two of them were dancing. People did not stop to stare or begin whispering. Hinata did not run up to her to pull her away from him. They were just one couple on a crowded floor. Slowly she began to relax as she realized she really was dancing with him. Since his wedding she had thought about how wonderful dancing with him would be. And it turned out to be every bit as enjoyable as she'd hoped. They moved together with his hands lightly upon her hips and hers resting on his shoulders. He was so graceful as he led across the dance floor. The best part of the dancing was that she got to look into those beautiful blue eyes. He was paying attention to her, not as a bodyguard, but as his dance partner. She really liked his attention. You were trying to fool me, Naruto accused. What? She had sudden panic thoughts about him knowing about her feelings. You've danced before, he said happily. She let out a relieved breath and shook her head. No, this really is my first time. But it's not hard to follow where you lead. Well, I thank you for your trust in me, he said lightly. And as they continued to dance, she gave him serious look. I would trust you with my life, so trusting you in a dance is not so much. He was a bit surprised at the solemn reply but nodded appreciatively. Well, thank you, Yugito-chan. You're very welcome, Naruto-kun. He quirked an eyebrow and sent her a questioning look. Naruto-kun. She suddenly gasped, realizing what she had just said. My apologies, Hokage-san. I did not mean to be so disrespectful, please forgive me. But Naruto simply laughed as they continued to dance. Yugito-chan, I was just teasing. You're one of my precious people and you can call me Naruto-kun whenever you like. She nodded carefully. I am a precious person. He looked at her in surprise. Well, of course you are. I like you and I care about you. You are precious to me. She felt her face darken. Thank you, Naruto, that means a great deal to me. And you are very precious to me as well. He nodded pleased. Are you feeling all right, Yugito-chan? You look sort of flushed. She nodded quickly and reassured. At this moment I think I feel better than I ever have. The two continued to dance. From a table Kushina and Hinata watched. Yugito seems to be enjoying herself. Kushina said carefully. Yes, Hinata replied. Perhaps just a little too much. Kushina suggested. Hinata glanced at her beloved mother-in-law. I'm glad Yugito is enjoying herself. I know the two of them are good friends. Kushina nodded and said no more. XXXXXXXXXXX. Before Shikamaru and Tamari could depart for their honeymoon, there was one thing Tamari had to take care of first. All you single girls get up here. Tamari called out. I'm going to throw the bouquet. There was a rush of about a dozen young women to the floor near Tamari. As Tayuya headed up, she noticed Gabriella was still seated with Haku. Aren't you coming? Gabriella shook her head and patted Haku's hand. No thanks, I already know my future. XXXXXXXXXXX. At the wedding reception of Naruto and Hinata. Hinata turned her back to the assembled girls. Ready, here it comes. She tossed out the bouquet. Hey. Ow. Bitch. Ino, Tenten, and Tayuya glared at Gabriella as she held her hard-won prize. You shoved me, Ino accused. Me too. Tenten rubbed her arm. What the fuck? You're already engaged. Tayuya let her have it. Just wanted to make sure. Gabriella said happily. XXXXXXXXXX. As the girls gathered, Ino, Tayuya, and Tenten eyed each other. It was a silly tradition, but the fact was silly or not, they all wanted that bouquet. Tamari turned her back. Go get it, ladies. In her excitement, she threw it a bit further than she'd planned to. Yugito had only gone up because Alyssa had insisted and almost dragged her up there. Having no wish to fight with a mob of women over a bunch of silly flowers, she stood to the rear at what she thought a safe distance. And so, of course, when the bouquet headed straight for her face, she was forced to catch it more or less in self-defense. Yugito found herself holding the bouquet and being faced down by 12 unhappy young women. You got the bouquet, Alyssa shouted happily. That means you're going to get married. What? She looked at the little girl in confusion. What does catching flowers have to do with my getting married? Ino laughed. I guess they don't have this tradition in Lightning Country. Here we believe that whoever catches the bouquet is the next one to get married. Though Ino couldn't see it, Choji let out a sigh of relief. Oh, Yugito looked down at the flowers she was holding. I see. So who's the lucky guy? Ino teased. Yugito insisted there was no one she would even think of marrying, but held the flowers tightly to make sure she didn't lose them. XXXXXXXXXXX. Having said their goodbyes, Shikamaru and Tamari climbed into a closed carriage and headed out of the village. They would spend a week in a little seaside villa for their honeymoon. Normally Tamari would never travel in a carriage, she preferred traveling under her own power. But it was tradition that the couple leave for their honeymoon in a carriage. They would go to an inn not far from Konoha and stay there for the night. Afterwards they would continue on their own. The carriage was wide and had cushioned seats. Shikamaru happily stretched out and let out a relieved sigh. Well, I'm glad that's over with, now we can just relax. Tamari carefully pulled the curtains down on the two-door windows. As soon as that was done, she began pulling off her wedding kimono. Who the hell said anything about rest, you lazy ninja? There was a smile on her face and an evil gleam in her eye. I'm still not pregnant and you have work to do. Shikamaru sat up and looked at her in horror. Here. XXXXXXXXXX. As the wedding carriage rolled along, people wondered why it seemed to be rocking so much. XXXXXXXXXX. 4 weeks later. As we agreed, the blue-haired ninja placed a massive briefcase on his desk. 100 million ryu in cash. As well as this, she placed a sealed document upon his desk. A non-aggression pact between our respective forces and a guarantee not to operate in or accept missions from Lightning Country. The Raikage's greedy eyes settled on the briefcase. Excellent. Conan frowned at the man's weakness. To think such a greedy fool had risen all the way to Cage. The Amekage expects you to keep your end of the bargain as well. The Raikage nodded. Of course, I am happy to hand Yugito over to you. She has served me well, but she has always been a danger. Conan nodded. You have done very well for yourself and your village. Not only will you remove the danger, but you've made a great profit. Behind her smile, Conan hoped that this was the first ninja village pain destroyed. The Amekage will be pleased to know that everything is going according to plan. 92. An old tradition. November was when fall began turning into winter. All the harvests were in and the fields were left bare. The trees had shed their leaves and the roses had withered away and would not be seen again until the following spring. There would be the first real cold days and the winds would pick up. Often the first snow flurries would come in November, leaving it all to clear that winter was on the way. It was a time to ready yourself for the bitter storms to come. XXXXXXXXXX. Since becoming Hokage, Naruto had been learning that very few of his decisions were truly significant. That is to say that in the time he'd been Hokage, perhaps 6 or 7 of his decisions were vital to the survival and well-being of his village and his people. Most of his decisions were important only to the people who were directly involved. Naruto was often forced to deal with issues that pitted one group from the village against another. He really hated those situations because there was usually no clear-cut bad guy. Both parties were loyal and law-abiding, but they would want different things and he was expected to settle their dispute. Usually with the result that one side ended up very unhappy with him. He tried to be as even-handed as he could, but there were just times when his actions had to favor one side or the other. As he and his little group headed toward the Hyuga mansion, he recalled a conversation he'd had with Tsunade shortly after being made her successor. He'd had his mother and his niece drill honor and codes of conduct into him from birth. Jiraiya had tried to give him a pragmatic point of view. Tsunade had tried to combine the two, idealism with a good bit of practicality. XXXXXXXXXX. 8 months ago. The two of them were leaving the tower. Tsunade smiled at him. How did you like your first day as acting Hokage? Please tell me there usually isn't that much paperwork. He grumbled. She laughed. I hate to break this to you, Naruto, but not every day will involve life or death decisions. But in a lot of ways the smaller decisions you'll have will be harder than the big ones. What do you mean? Tsunade grinned. Well, when Orochimaru is attacking the village, it's pretty easy to know what needs to be done. But when two groups come up to you both claiming to have been cheated and ask you to decide who is in the wrong, it can be hard to sort out. I don't see why. I'll just punish the one who is wrong. Naruto replied. Oh really? Tsunade said. A man owns a one-of-a-kind sword which he believes to be defective. The sword was especially made by his clan and he has spent many years hoping to unleash its power. Finally convinced it will never be the mighty weapon it should be, he decides to simply give it away. A member of a different clan took the unwanted sword and was able to finally unleash its full potential. Seeing the weapon really was as powerful as he had hoped, he demanded it be returned to him as it had originally been his, and he had only given it away because he thought the sword useless. The second clan refused to give up ownership, claiming the first had given up all rights to it. They both come to you demanding that the sword is theirs. How do you rule? Naruto gave the situation some thought. In his mind he compared the one-of-a-kind sword to one of his father's unique jutsu scroll. He imagined his mother somehow mistaking it for a common library scroll and simply giving it away without realizing what it really was. I would have it returned to the original clan, Naruto stated and explained his reasoning. Tsunade nodded. So according to you I should have removed Gabriella from your mother's squad and placed her in another one of Ryuki's choosing. He stared at her. What are you talking about? The example I just gave you was about Gabriella, she was the unique weapon. Her father spent many hours and much effort trying to help her develop the Sharingan. When he gave up hope that she would ever succeed, he declared that he and the Uchiha clan were disinterested in her. At which point I placed her under Kushina. Well, of course Gabriella finally achieved Sharingan, at which point her father demanded she be reassigned to a new squad. Tsunade nodded to herself. I refused. Arrogant jerk, I'd have refused to. Naruto declared. Oh, she came to an abrupt halt. Why the sudden change of heart? Naruto frowned. Well, because Ryuki is arrogant and. So you're going to base your decisions on personal preference. Tsunade frowned. That's not justice, Naruto, that's playing favorites. Suppose Gabriella were a member of the Nara clan who had failed to use shadow jutsus. Say she was placed under a sensei who was an Uchiha and that somehow he was able to help her activate her Kekkei Genkai. If Shikamaru or Yoshino came to you wanting her placed on a new squad after telling you they'd had no interest in her, what would you do then? Would you reverse yourself again just because it was the Naras? Even if you don't like a particular person or group, Naruto is Hokage, you are honor bound to treat them with the same respect and concern you show for everyone else. He listened to her and he slowly nodded. I guess you're right. He let out a depressed sigh. It sounds like being Hokage is going to be even harder than I thought. Oh, it will be, trust me. You're going to have situations where different rights come into conflict. Kami help you the first time one of the merchant guilds has an argument with one of the clans. She shut her eyes in remembered pain. You get one side screaming about contracts and agreements and the other shouting about clan rights, and they both have some points. It can be a real headache sometimes. So what do? He asked, genuinely curious. She started walking again. You do the best that you can, and if at all possible you try to find some sort of compromise where both sides can at least get something. Naruto thought that very good advice and made sure to remember it. XXXXXXXXXX. As the four of them entered the Hyuga estates, his wife suddenly leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Thank you for doing this, Naruto-kun. I know this is putting you in a difficult position. He looked over to her and gave her a little smile. It's all right, Hinata-chan, I'd do anything for you and I know just how much this means to you. Besides, he looked over at their two companions. I happen to think this is the right thing to do, even if it is going to be hard. XXXXXXXXXX. After all his stays at the Hyuga mansion, Naruto didn't need the guards to show him the way to Hiashi's study. He could have led them. In short order, he and the others were allowed in. Hiashi and the other clan members who were waiting bowed to him. You honor us with this visit, Hokage-sama, Hiashi said in his usual formal voice. If he was curious, he hid it well. He nodded to the others present. As you requested, the elders and 4 cadet branch members are also here. Thank you for honoring my request, Hiashi-san. Naruto, Hinata, Neji, and Tenten bowed to him. I know it was short notice and I appreciate it. I am at your service, Hokage-sama. Now that we are all here, can you tell me the cause for this meeting? He glanced at Neji and Tenten. Neji looked completely at ease, whereas Tenten was clearly fidgeting. I presume it has something to do with my nephew and his girlfriend. It is, Naruto answered. He looked at Hiashi and the elders warily. They were good people, and he was personally in their debt. And if they were too formal and too committed to rigid and harsh traditions, that by itself did not make them bad men. Of course, Naruto had never had the caged bird seal placed on him or lived with the fact that his children would have it placed on them. The Hyuga wouldn't have dared to make that a condition for Hinata's marrying the Namikaze clan heir. Kushina had told Hiashi many years before that as much as she adored Hinata, she would never permit her grandchildren to bear the seal. Neji calmly reached out and took Tenten's hand into his. Hiashi-sama, I wish to marry Tenten and make her my wife. The news was hardly shocking to anyone who had seen the two of them together. Hiashi nodded and even produced a small smile. I am pleased to hear that. I heartily approve and will welcome her into the clan. But why did you feel the need to have the Hokage and Hinata present? You could have simply told me in private. Neji looked at his uncle calmly. I do not want the caged bird seal placed on my children. I have come here with the Hokage and with Hinata-san in the hopes of convincing the clan to end the practice. To Hiashi's right were the 4 elders of the Hyuga clan, all of them main branch members. To Hiashi's left were 4 members of the cadet branch. Neji's simple statement produced immediate reactions from both groups. The elders looked as if they were having strokes and immediately began to shouting at Neji about clan traditions and clan loyalties and clan business. The cadet members said nothing at all, it was not their place to speak unless spoken to, but each one could not keep a hopeful look from crossing their faces. It took Hiashi a moment to calm down the elders. He faced Naruto with a frown and a very displeased look. Is that the reason you have come here, Hokage-sama? To try and force us to end the practice? The seal is one of our most honored clan traditions. One of the elders snapped. Neji looked at him and quirked an eyebrow. Have you ever asked someone who actually wears it whether or not they want the honor? It's cruel and barbaric. Tenten shouted. I wouldn't use it on an enemy, never mind on children. Naruto and Hiashi both motioned for silence. Everyone please calm down. Naruto focused on Hiashi. I give you my solemn word that I have not come here to try and force the Hyuga clan to do anything it does not want to. Hiashi nodded warily. I am happy to hear that, Hokage-sama. After all, the Hyuga clan has been loyal to this village since its founding. In return for this loyalty we naturally expect to have the rights promised to us by the Shodai honored. Naruto held up his hands. Believe me, Hiashi-san, I know about the special rights of clans and I am not about to interfere with that. If he was seen interfering with a clan's rights, even over something as distasteful as the bird seal, the other clans would be up in arms and screaming he had overstepped his bounds as Hokage. Given the precarious situation he was in with Akatsuki, Uchiha, and Danzo, he needed the clans to keep supporting him. I am pleased to hear this given the fact that your own clan took full advantage of those rights. Hiashi pointed out. The elder who had spoken before decided to make the point unmistakably clear. Your mother killed dozens of men in cold blood to protect you and she was never so much as rebuked for it. If it were not for clan rights you never would have made it to your first birthday. Hiashi sent the man a look that silenced him. The last thing he wanted was to antagonize the Hokage and damage the close ties that the two clans shared. Especially since Naruto was not shouting or threatening. Please forgive that outburst, Hokage-sama. I know you are aware of the value of the special status that clans enjoy. As I also know you are aware of how much my clan and I personally have done on your behalf. Naruto could only nod at that. Hiashi-san, I readily admit that my mother used the clan rights to protect me. I am also more than ready to acknowledge the huge debt I owe to you and your clan. Not only for your protection, but for allowing me to marry my beloved Hinata-chan. He took a deep breath. As I have already stated, I will not try to force the Hyuga clan to do anything against its will. I am here to try and convince you that it is in the clan's own interests to end the practice. His very beautiful and very pregnant wife stepped forward. Father, you know how much pain and suffering the seal has caused. It has torn our family in two and reduced most of our clan to hopeless servitude. She looked pleadingly from her father to the elders. This is not how a family should be. My daughter, Hiashi spoke firmly. The seal is necessary, for the good of the clan as well as the village. It is needed to protect the secrets of the Byakugan. That is a lie, Neji stated flatly. If that were true then every member of the clan would wear the seal. How dare you call the leader of your clan a liar? The same elder said angrily. Show him the proper respect or, one word too late, he snapped his mouth shut. Neji grinned, he knew what the man had been about to say. Or he will punish me by activating my seal. That is the only real purpose to the seal, to force obedience through threat. No, Neji, Hiashi spoke up and covered up any embarrassment he might have felt. Its purpose is to protect the Byakugan. That has always been the main reason for the seal. In that case, Hiashi-san, Naruto spoke. I respectfully submit to you that the seal is not worth the trouble it causes. The fact of the matter is that while information can be gained from corpses, it is virtually impossible to artificially create a Kekkei Genkai. Over the past decades, how many bodies of Uchiha, Nara, main branch Hyuga, have enemies recovered? Yet in all that time no one has ever found a way to artificially create a Kekkei Genkai. In fact, pretty much everyone agrees that the only way to acquire one is to get a living person and then breed. That being the case, what real value does the seal hold? Hiashi frowned. Hokage-sama, it is an unfortunate reality that in this world some must lead and some must follow. Success in battle as well in life is only possible when there is absolute discipline. Each member must play his or her part in order for the whole group to succeed. I agree that discipline is vital to success. Naruto frowned. But every other clan manages without having to resort to corporal punishment. They instead rely on simple family loyalty and love. Hiashi looked at him in genuine surprise and slowly shook his head. I am sorry, but as a simple practical matter I would prefer to rely on the seal. I understand that many see it as a negative or even as distasteful. Nevertheless, the absolute security it provides has long been a strength. One we do not choose to give up. Naruto was very unhappy at what he would have to now do. He had honestly hoped that Hiashi might see simple reason. Hiashi was a good man and though formal and reserved, Naruto knew he was fair. But on certain subjects his mind was made up and he was not open to change. At least not until the need for change was rubbed into his face. What would you say if the seal was no longer a strength but a terrible weakness? Naruto said quietly. How so? Hiyoshi asked. Naruto looked over to Neji, who barely nodded. May I have your permission to perform a jutsu? Hiyoshi again looked surprised. I presume it is not dangerous. Not to you, Naruto assured. Very well, Hiyoshi said. Naruto looked at the 4 cadet branch members. I am sorry. He performed 7 seals. Pain. The caged bird seals all began to glow. Immediately Neji and the other 4 screamed and dropped to the floor, clutching at their heads. Naruto released the jutsu after just a handful of seconds. It sickened him to have to hurt innocent people, but he hoped they would forgive him. Tenten and Hinata were kneeling over Neji as he and the others were still lying on the floor. The elders and Hiyoshi meanwhile were standing there dumbfounded. How did you do that? The elder shrieked. Only Hyuga members have the ability to activate the caged bird seal. Naruto sent him a nasty little smile. You don't really know much about seals, do you? He decided to give Hiyoshi and the rest a quick lesson on the basics of Fuinjutsu. He spoke almost the exact same words Jiraiya had while teaching him. Every seal is both a strength and a weakness because essentially every seal is a lock of one sort or another. The strength comes from the fact that a lock will protect and secure. The weakness comes from the fact that any lock can be opened so long as you have the proper key. This was some sort of trick. The elder insisted. I refuse to believe that anyone outside the clan could activate the seal. Naruto sighed. Why? Because a Hyuga originally invented it, so only a Hyuga could possibly figure out how it works. This was the sort of arrogance that was poisoning the Uchiha clan. The automatic assumption of superiority based not on ability but on simple birth. In the ninja world it was usually fatal to assume others could not do the same things you could. Ukul, Hiyoshi spoke calmly. The Hokage is recognized as a seal master and was trained by Jiraiya himself. We must acknowledge his expertise in this field. But it is impossible. Ukul turned and did not quite glare at the Hokage. It must have been some sort of trick. I thought you would believe that. Which is the reason I asked Hiyoshi-san to choose 4 adult cadet branch members and have them present. If you require more proof, go pick out any other members with the seal. I guarantee you this is no trick. None of them seemed eager to take him up on the offer. A fact for which Naruto was relieved. I acknowledge that you were able to activate the seals. Hiyoshi stated. This time no one objected. You should be aware that I could kill just easily as I inflicted pain. I trust you can all appreciate the fact that should this jutsu become known to our enemies, 3/4 of the Hyuga clan would immediately be rendered useless for missions or battles. Rather than being a strength, they would become a liability. Hiyoshi and the elders all looked at one another nervously. The harsh truth was that if their enemies could kill them with a single jutsu, then every cadet branch member really would have to be restricted to the village. 3/4 of their number would be made ineffective overnight. I trust that as Hokage you would not allow this information to be released. Hiyoshi said. Of course not, I would never do anything that would put my own people at risk. But the point is it can be done. Naruto looked at them seriously. Sooner or later someone from another village will figure this out just as I have. Especially when they learn it's possible. As Hokage you cannot make this public knowledge. Hiyoshi stated. That too would endanger the village. Oh, I won't say a word. Naruto said. But I will, Hinata said firmly. So will I, Tenten said as she helped Neji back to his feet. As will I, Neji said as he leaned more heavily than usual on his cane. I will, one of the cadet members spoke. And so will I, another stated. All 4 of the witnesses stated they would tell people about what had happened. Hiyoshi looked at them as though they were all mad. Do you understand that by letting this information get out you will be putting the lives of every cadet member in serious danger? If it means that my children will never bear this seal, then I am willing to take that risk. Neji said. To Hiyoshi's surprise the others all nodded. Hiyoshi looked back at Naruto. Hokage-sama, you are destroying my clan's most important tradition. Which only proves that some traditions really need to be destroyed. Naruto said with the slightest bit of sympathy. Traditions are man-made, Hiyoshi-san, they are not given to us by Holy Writ. Now it just so happens that along with developing a way to activate the seals I have also come up with a way to permanently deactivate them. This new revelation brought more excitement from every clan member in the room, both cadet and main branch. Hinata had always been upset about how the cadet branch was treated. But when Neji had come to her to confess that he wanted to marry Tenten, but did not want his children to have the seal, it had set a new fire under her. The fact Elisa's new best friend was also a Hyuga branch member was one more reason. Naruto had worked hard on creating 2 more new jutsus. One that would activate the curse seal and one that render it inert. Then he'd had to come up with a way to convince the Hyuga clan without causing them to hate him. I realize that this may be a very difficult transition. Naruto spoke up. Therefore, if the Hyuga clan would agree to abolish the caged bird seal and allow me to deactivate all the current ones, I would be willing to offer up some compensation. What sort of compensation? Hiyoshi asked suspiciously. Naruto smiled. I will allow the Hyuga clan to establish a new security force within the village and I will recognize you as its head. There was silence at the surprising offer. My clan has long sought to form a rival force to match the military police that the Uchiha dominate. Are you saying that if I agree to your terms you will authorize a second military police force? Naruto nodded. That's right. Currently the Anbu and the military police share responsibility for maintaining the internal security of the village. I propose that you found a new security force with the Hyuga serving as its core. We can call it the Internal Security Force, or the ISF. You will receive the exact same funding and have the exact same authority within the village as the military police. The Anbu will remain the only organization dealing with both internal and external threats. Hiyoshi considered the offer. This is something I have wanted since your father was still Hokage. It will greatly increase the standing and power of my clan. He looked at Naruto shrewdly. Why do you offer it to me now? As I said, it is compensation. Naruto replied simply. Hiyoshi grinned knowingly. You do not trust the Uchiha. I never said that. But you do not deny it. Naruto smiled carefully. What if I just say that having known the Hyuga clan my entire life I have faith in the honor and loyalty in this clan? Naruto extended his hand. Will you accept my offer, Hiyoshi-san? Hiyoshi hesitated a moment. Getting rid of the caged bird seal was a radical step, and one he was not eager to take. But the fact was that if the seal could be activated by others it was worthless. Worse than worthless, it was an exposed weakness. Whether he liked it or not, the seal would have to be gotten rid of, and the chance to completely outshine the Uchiha was just too good to pass up. He reached out and firmly shook hands with the Hokage. Hokage-sama, we have an agreement. XXXXXXXXXX. And so in one step Naruto destroyed a tradition that he and most others found despicable while establishing a new department that would rival the military police. And doing so while keeping the Hyuga clan firmly on his side. Tsunade would have been proud. Spoiler. 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 Author's note: this is a rant that has to do with the most recent manga. If you do not want to know what is happening there, please read no further. In my stories I have killed Naruto, multiple times. Killed Sasuke, multiple. Killed Sakura, multiple. Killed Hinata. Killed Tsunade. Killed Orochimaru. Killed Kabuto. Killed Sarutobi. Killed Shikaku. Killed Inoichi. Killed Choza. Killed Choji. Killed Gaara. Killed Kankuro. Killed Tamari. Killed Zabuza. Killed Kisame, multiple. Killed Itachi, multiple. Made Hinata a cold-hearted avenger. Made Hinata a nose rival. Made Hinata give Naruto her first kiss publicly at a party. Made Hinata cut a nose ponytail off. Made Hinata a pregnant wife. Made Hinata a scarred Anbu Black Ops captain. Made Sasuke Naruto's best friend. Made Sasuke Naruto's killer. Made Sasuke lose the Sharingan. Made Sasuke gain the Mangekyo Sharingan. Made Sasuke learn the inner gates. Made Sasuke kiss Sakura and later tell her it meant nothing. Made Sakura an avenger. Made Sakura date Lee. Made Kakashi retrieve Sasuke. Made Kakashi Naruto's Nissen. Made Kakashi perform a mission hinged as a woman. Made Kakashi a willing servant of Orochimaru. Made Tsunade lose a game of cards to a 9-year-old who had never played before. Made Tsunade sacrifice herself to save Naruto. Made Tsunade babysit. Made Tsunade try to teach medical jutsus to Naruto. Made Tsunade date Jiraiya. Made Tsunade torture Jiraiya with a 5-pound bag of salt. Made Jiraiya offer to give up peeping at women while training Naruto. Made Jiraiya take Naruto with him to Iwa. Made Jiraiya question his sanity because he was in love with Tsunade. Made Minato a traitor. Made Orochimaru the Yondaime Hokage. Made Naruto cage of a village other than Konoha. Allowed the Kyuubi to destroy Konoha. Allowed the Kyuubi to be extracted. Made Anko Orochimaru's lover and right hand. Made Anko an avenger. Made Anko a stripper at a bachelor party. Made Anko a pregnant wife. Made Anko Naruto's aunt. Now I am fine with all of the above and a whole lot more. But Itachi massacring his entire clan and still somehow being one of the good guys. Sorry, that is just too much for me to imagine. Here is my problem. If Itachi had killed all the Uchiha ninja I could understand that, especially if they were plotting a coup. He killed the entire clan, which would have included a good number of helpless civilians as well as babies and children. Any action that includes the mass slaughter of innocents cannot be considered lawful or justified under any circumstances. And if he was acting under Sarutobi's orders, which I do not believe, I would lose respect for Sarutobi as well. 93. 2 promises. Red flames within a golden circle inside a black square. That was the symbol of the new ISF. Ryuki hated it. No, he didn't simply hate it, he despised it with every fiber of his being. The ISF had been granted life thanks to an executive order of the Hokages. And the Hyuga clan had built it up with an indecent haste. Soon there would be ninja running about the village with their badges claiming to have the same authority and expertise in the military police. So far as Ryuki was concerned, the very existence of the ISF was nothing less than an insult to the entire Uchiha clan. And he had made damn sure the Hokage knew it. XXXXXXXXXX. This is an outrage, Ryuki shouted. Naruto was sitting behind his desk in his pristine Hokage robe, utterly calm. What is? He said with a straight face. Don't play dumb. You damn well know I am talking about this fraud police force you've invented. The ISF is very real, I assure you. Hiashi promises me it will be fully functional within 2 weeks, and I believe him. Naruto remained completely serene. I demand that you rescind your executive order and not allow this abomination to take place. No. Since becoming the clan head of the Uchiha, Ryuki had not heard that word very often. And he was damned if he would allow even the Hokage to deny him. The very existence of this so-called police force of yours is a direct and unforgivable insult to my clan. How have I insulted your clan by taking steps to better protect this village? Naruto asked reasonably. We were given the right to establish the military police by the Shodai Hokage himself. We consider that to be a central part of our clan rights. To Ryuki's surprise, Naruto not only remained calm but actually nodded his agreement. I recognize that fact and would not do anything to deny you or your clan what was given to you by the Shodai. And I haven't. What do you mean? This invention of yours is a direct threat to my clan's rights. It is no such thing, it in no way threatens the existence of the military police. I have in fact done nothing at all to the funding or inner workings of the organization. I have left the military police completely untouched. You have violated our traditional right to enforce the laws of this village. No, I haven't. You are still free to enforce the laws of this village. You will simply have additional help. We have always acted alone, and I demand that you leave us our time-honored duty. I hate to correct you, Ryuki, but that is just not so. The military police have never been the sole authority within this village. They have always shared that responsibility with the Anbu. The Shodai never granted you the exclusive right to enforce the laws of this village, not even in his own lifetime. You cannot demand I respect a right that was never yours to begin with. Ryuki stared at the Hokage with impotent fury. This is an insult, and I promise you that my clan will not stand for it. You are free to bring the matter up with the council. What good would that do? Ryuki said bitterly. Of the 16 members, 3 of them are related to you by blood or marriage. While your most recent addition is your own personal servant. That taunt brought out the first sign of emotion as Naruto frowned. Haku is not my servant, he is a good friend of mine, and he is about to become your son-in-law. Which does me no good at all, since he will never go against your wishes. Most of the rest of the council seems to be made up of personal friends of yours. I've known most of them since I was an academy student, and being friends had nothing to do with politics. Naruto fondly recalled birthday parties and afternoons chasing Gamikichi around. Anyway, isn't that what a Hokage is supposed to do? Build up his support on the council. The point is, the council is nothing more than a rubber stamp. You will always find a majority on it to support whatever you do. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the reason they support me is because they think I am doing a good job and believe in me? Naruto asked quietly. Ryuki shook his head. The council had nothing to do with any of that, it was all about politics and getting what you wanted through promises or intimidation. I will admit this much, you are a far more effective Hokage than I ever expected a 15-year-old to be. I'm 16 now, Naruto answered, and I've had some damn good teachers. Be that as it may, Hokage-sama, this creation of yours is a direct challenge to the supremacy of the Uchiha clan, and we will not tolerate it. Ryuki warned. Naruto narrowed his eyes. You know, Ryuki, that sounds an awful lot like a threat. You are free to take it however you wish, Hokage-sama, but know that my clan will not tolerate the Hyuga acting as policemen. He had said what he had come to say. He gave the Hokage a slight bow and turned to go. Ryuki, Naruto spoke, and he halted his exit. My nindo is to never go back on my word, and I never have. I have never broken a promise. I am going to make you 2 promises right here and now. First, I give you my word that so long as the Uchiha clan is loyal to this village and to me, I will never interfere with your clan rights. I will treat the Uchiha clan with the exact same amount of respect that I show every other clan of this village. Ryuki nodded. That was only proper, but he was glad to hear it. Even though in his opinion Naruto was doing exactly that by creating a rival police force. And your second promise? And as Ryuki watched, Naruto's face darkened. If the Uchiha clan ever betrays this village, I'll destroy them. What? Naruto repeated himself. If the Uchiha clan betrays the village, I will annihilate them. You would dare make such a threat openly? It is not a threat, it is a promise, and you can be sure that anyone who betrays this village will meet the same end. Ryuki offered up a false smile. The Uchiha clan would never betray the village or its Hokage. Naruto's smile was just as fake. Of course not, I never for a second thought that. Ryuki gave a second more respectful bow and left the office. XXXXXXXXXX. That night he had asked his daughter to return home so he could speak with her. Gabriella had been happy to do so in the hopes that the clan had finally accepted the fact she was helping Haku found Momochi. She was wrong. I want you to end your engagement to Haku, Ryuki told her flatly. Gabriella stared at her father. She had been in love with him for over 3 years now. He was the only one she wanted to be with. Father, how can you even ask that? I had a very hard time making my choice, but I made it. How can you expect me to go back on it now? Ryuki frowned at his only child. Things are changing, Gabriella. Since the sixth came into power, things have become far worse, both within and without the village. Haku is no more than a puppet of the Hokages, even if he does have a powerful bloodline. The elders and I agree that you should not marry him. I don't believe this. Father, there is no way I would ever break up with Haku. Her father looked at her sadly. In that case, I will have no choice but to disown you, daughter. You will no longer be seen as an Uchiha and you will not be welcomed in this house or in the Uchiha compound. She gasped. She had never once imagined that he could be this cruel. You'd disown me for marrying into another clan. That happens every damn year. Hitomi married into the Nara clan just a couple months ago. Have you disowned her too? Hitomi did not marry a clan head who is tied completely to the Hokage. Things are changing, Gabriella. The day is coming when you will have to choose sides. She did not like the sound of that one bit. I don't need to choose sides, father. She took a hold of the hideite that was around her neck. This is my side, and in case you've forgotten, you wear one just like it. So you would put your loyalty to the village above that to the clan. She shook her head. They aren't mutually exclusive, father. I can be loyal to both. The Uchiha clan is a part of the village, we serve the village, not simply ourselves. Ryuki nodded as though agreeing. Of course we do, and that would never change. But a storm is coming, Gabriella, and no one can know just what the future holds. You are determined to marry Haku regardless of my wishes or the wishes of the elders. She stiffened her back. That's right, father. I love him and I am marrying him. He looked at her with real sadness. Even if he didn't always show it, he did love her. But the clan came first, even before immediate family. In that case, I ask you to no longer consider yourself to be an Uchiha or my daughter. She stared at him a moment, not believing he could do something so callous so easily. Finally, she took a step back and gave him a deep bow. Who am I to argue with the mighty Uchiha clan? She turned her back to him. Goodbye, Uchiha Ryuki. She marched out of the house she had grown up in and out of the Uchiha compound. She promised herself she would never step foot into either one again. XXXXXXXXXX. Hokage-sama, would you please marry us? Naruto looked up from the dinner table where he and all the other residents of the mansion were eating. Gabriella had stormed in and dragged Haku out of his seat to talk to him. After a few minutes they had come back into the dining room. Naruto didn't understand the need for the question. I've already agreed to Gabriella. I'm very happy to perform the ceremony. I mean, would you marry us right now? Gabriella clarified. Now, Naruto asked. Gabriella and Haku both shook their heads. But Gabriella, Kushina spoke up. I thought you wanted to have a big wedding next spring. What about all the plans? Your wedding kimono isn't even ready yet. She bowed low to her sensei. I am very sorry for ruining all the plans we made together, Kushina sensei. I really did want to have a big fancy wedding with lots of guests. But I've decided that what I really want is to be Momochi, Gabriella, and I want it tonight. I don't want to wait. Kushina frowned. What happened with your father? Gabriella had told her about the meeting and her hopes of fixing the differences between them. He asked me to break my engagement. When I refused, he disowned me. He did what? Kushina was on her feet, furious. How dare he? The only reason to disown someone is if they have committed some unforgivable crime like murder or treason. I can't believe he would do this simply because you are marrying someone he doesn't approve of. Gabriella shook her head. It doesn't matter why he's doing it. The fact is I am no longer an Uchiha, so I figure I may as well get a head start on being a Momochi. Naruto stood up from the dinner table. I'd be happy to marry you two tonight, but are you sure you don't want to wait even a few days? I'm sure my mom could set up something and you could invite guests. Gabriella shook her head adamantly. I want this done tonight. She paused in thought. But there is someone I'd like to invite. XXXXXXXXXX. So the two of you are tying the fucking knot, huh? Tayuya said. Kushina immediately looked in her direction. Tayuya, you do know I have plenty of soap in this house, don't you? Tayuya shivered at her memories and nodded. Gabriella smiled. Better be careful with your language or you know what will happen. Yeah, I know. Tayuya let out a sigh of frustration that was only partly due to having to censor herself. Well, congratulations, I know you'll be happy. Gabriella nodded. Thank you, and even though I hadn't gotten around to asking, would you be my maid of honor? Tayuya blinked. Me. I sort of expected you would ask Hinata. I mean, we haven't exactly gotten along real well. I know, but you saved me and Haku more than once. And I'm sort of hoping maybe we can finally stop fighting over him and be good friends. A bit surprised at the offer, Tayuya nodded. I'd like that. She actually meant it. They had been teammates for a while now, and though there were jealousies and fights between them, there was also a powerful respect and occasional liking. Especially when Haku was somewhere else. XXXXXXXXXX. It was a very different sort of wedding. There was no planning, no formal dress, no music, no walk down the aisle, and except for Tayuya, the only people attending were the people who lived at the mansion. There was also a certain amount of irony given the fact that a girl who had spent her whole life dreaming of a big formal wedding had wound up insisting on what really amounted to an elopement. There was also a bit of irony in the fact that Anko wound up attending a wedding at the Namikaze mansion, with Kushina present, dressed in a trench coat, miniskirt, and fishnet. The ceremony was small and completely informal, but by the way the couple kissed it seemed clear they were both happy with it. XXXXXXXXXXX. There was a loud and insistent knocking on Kiba's apartment door. I'm coming already, he shouted as he opened the door. There was Tayuya standing in her usual ninja clothing, looking at him as though she was thinking about kicking him. Tayuya, what are you doing here? Right now I'm standing in the fucking hallway. Are you going to invite me in or what? Sure, he stepped aside. Come on in. After she'd stepped inside, he closed the door. He was looking at her a little nervously. What can I do for you? She looked at him suspiciously. Why have you been sending me flowers and candy since we had sex? Feeling like he was on trial, he nervously scratched his neck. Well, I guess I thought you might like them. She shook her head. I know that. What I mean is, why do you send them? He looked at her and knew that if he lied she would know it. He stared at the floor and mumbled something. What was that? Tayuya questioned. I said I like you. Kiba repeated just a little louder. She snorted. Which means you're hoping to fuck me again. No. He snapped his eyes back up to meet hers. I don't just want to have sex, I really like you and I want you to be my girlfriend. Bullshit. She shouted at him. I'm not the kind of girl that guys want to be with. Images of Gabriella and Hinata flashed through her mind. I'm the one guys just want to fuck and forget. I don't. I really like you and I really want to be with you. Oh yeah. Why? Why would you want to be with someone like me? Look, I won't pretend I don't want to have sex with you. You're beautiful, you have a killer body, and you are just an animal in bed. Despite her own blunt nature, she actually blushed at that. But that's not it. You're honest and straightforward and you never play the stupid games other girls do. You're fun to be with and when you're around things are always interesting. He looked away again. Look, I know that I'm not Haku. I'm really not the sensitive type, but I'm a good guy and I would treat you good. I just plain like you. He let out a depressed sigh. He was sure Haku could have said that much more smoothly, but sharing feeling was not his thing. Tayuya stared at him in surprise. She wasn't sure what she'd been expecting when she'd decided to come here. Part of her had wanted to just finally confront Kiba on why he kept sending her stuff. Another part of her was feeling lonely and had been sort of hoping for another one-nighter. No part of her had expected him to come right out and say he genuinely liked her. So you really want to date me? Yeah, he nodded. She shrugged. Okay then. He looked at her in surprise and in sudden hope. Okay. His heart began pounding in his chest. She nodded. If you're serious, we can give it a shot. But, she stuck a finger in his face. There are two things you better understand right up front. I've been played and I won't ever let that happen again. So 1, don't ever lie to me. If you ever lie to me, it's over. And 2, if I ever catch you cheating on me, I'll cut your fucking balls off. Got me? He nodded. I understand, I promise I won't ever lie or cheat. Man, she's scary, but so hot. Good, she grabbed him and brought his mouth down to hers. She eagerly sent her tongue into his mouth and began pulling off his jacket. Now take me to bed and I'll show you what kind of an animal I am. That was all the invitation he needed as he scooped her up and headed towards the bedroom. XXXXXXXXXXX. 2 weeks had passed and the ISF had finally begun operation. There had been no further complaints from the Uchiha clan. Naruto wasn't sure whether to be relieved by their silence, or to be worried about it. He tended to go with the latter. There was a knock on his office door and Shizune poked her head in. Pardon me, Hokage-sama, but Jiraiya is here and he insists on talking to you immediately. Naruto calmly nodded even as his stomach turned to ice. Jiraiya hadn't planned on returning to the village so soon. If he was here demanding to talk, it couldn't possibly be good news. Jiraiya came in and carefully shut the door. One look at his face confirmed Naruto's fears. As was his habit, Jiraiya did not bother wasting any time. He pulled out a scroll and handed it over. Kid, we have got a serious problem. This is a copy, don't ask me how I got it, but I guarantee you it's 100% authentic. Naruto quickly opened up the scroll and began reading it. His eyebrows jumped at what was there. A non-aggression pact between Akatsuki and Lightning. He couldn't believe that any Kage could be so blind as to actually trust Akatsuki. Or so stupid as to hand over a loyal ninja to them, never mind a Jinchuriki. Jiraiya, are you absolutely sure this is real? Kid, if I had any doubts I wouldn't be here in person. There's no doubt about it. Yugito is about to be betrayed. 94. Will you? Author's notes: the short poem Naruto Speaks was actually read out by the Emperor Hirohito to his advisors shortly before the attack on Pearl Harbor. XXXXXXXXXX. Short story. Hinata, Gabriella, and Tamari were sitting down at a restaurant for lunch one day. The fourth member of their group was running a bit late. The three married women all began to make small talk, and not surprisingly, the conversation turned to the subject of their husbands. Each of them naturally thought that they had the best husband and began arguing back and forth to no avail. Seeing their arguing was getting them nowhere, Tamari had an idea. Hey, instead of arguing about whose husband is the best, why don't we compare the feature about our husbands we like best? Tamari said. Well, that sounds interesting. Gabriella said. I'm in. Hinata nodded. Oh, me too. All right then, why don't you start us off, Hinata? Tamari stated. Well, Naruto's best feature is definitely his eyes. She let out a girlish sigh that hinted at long hours spent thinking about those eyes. They are the most amazing shade of blue, and when he looks at me in a certain way, she began to blush just at the thought. I just know that he loves me and always will. Ah, Gabriella smiled. That is sweet. Tamari nodded and turned to her right. Why don't you go next, Gabriella? Sure, with Haku, his best feature is without a doubt his lips. Gabriella smiled dreamily. They are unbelievably soft, and when he kisses me, he makes my knees weak. Hinata put a hand over her mouth and giggled. Tamari grinned approvingly. So how about you, Tamari? Gabriella asked. Well, believe it or not, Shikamaru's best feature is his hands. They're strong but also very gentle. When he holds me, I know he will never let me go, and I know he will also be gentle with me. Both the other girls agreed that was a great trait for a husband to have. Well, this still doesn't help us pick a winner. Tamari complained. Winner for what? The fourth member of their group arrived and pulled up a seat. Oh, Anko, Hinata greeted her. We were trying to decide which of us has the best husband, and so we were comparing the best feature of each. Tamari nodded. That's right, for Naruto it's his eyes, for Haku it's his lips, and for Shika it's his hands. Gabriella smiled encouragingly. So you want to join in? Anko shrugged. Well, okay, but I'm afraid my man has got all of yours beat. Really? Hinata asked curiously. What is Shinzu's best feature? Well, you see, he does this thing with his tongue where, she spent about 5 minutes graphically describing exactly what he did. Hinata turned 10 shades of red before passing out in her seat. Gabriella covered her ears and ran to the ladies' room to get away. Tamari, however, sat there and listened to every word fascinated. When Anko was finally done, she said, Damn it, do you think Shinzo could come over and have a talk with Shika? Anko meanwhile sat there and smiled, knowing she had won. XXXXXXXXXXX. It is our hope that all the world's oceans be joined in peace. So why do the winds and waves now rise up in angry rage? Naruto said quietly. What was that, kid? Jiraiya asked. That was a poem spoken by an ancient emperor on the eve of a great and terrible war. It somehow seemed appropriate. Jiraiya shook his head, slightly amused. I've got to say, I never took you for a poet. Naruto shrugged. I read more than just jutsu scrolls in my family library. Well, kid, you might want to brush up on your poetry. I've got more bad news for you. Why am I not surprised? The Raikage has already sent a messenger to contact her. I'm guessing he'll be ordering her to return to Kumo. He wouldn't dare, Naruto said sharply. We have a signed contract that doesn't run out for another 5 months. If he breaks a contract with me, it's an insult not just to me but to the whole village. Jiraiya nodded. I know, kid, but I'm guessing he thinks it's worth the risk. Naruto looked at the scroll in his hands. So what do I do now? XXXXXXXXXX. Yugito was at her usual spot, standing guard outside the Hokage's door. She'd been doing it long enough that no one even noticed her anymore. She'd also been doing it long enough to get used to not smelling any fear. Right now there was a slight bit of worry among the staff in the reception area, but that had nothing to do with her. Jiraiya had arrived unexpectedly and demanding to see the Hokage. That was what had people worried. The door to the office opened and Naruto popped his head out. Yugito, would you come in here please? Of course, Hokage-san. Once in his office, he invited her to be seated. Jiraiya was also seated and was looking at her with a little too much concern. Kid, this is a mistake. Maybe, Naruto acknowledged. But she has a right to know. He handed her the scroll. Jiraiya assures me that what's on this scroll is authentic. Naturally curious, she took it from him. As she read it, she gave no indication of what she thought. Finally, she rolled it back up and handed it back to Naruto. You do realize I am going to have to report that this information has been stolen from my village. Naruto and Jiraiya both stared. That's it, Naruto demanded. He seemed far more upset than her. How can you be calm about this? He opened the scroll back up and read off a line. The village of Kumo gives up all claim to the Jinchuriki Yugito and agrees to deliver said Jinchuriki to Akatsuki to do with as they please. He looked up and stared at her. She stared back completely calm. How are you not upset by this? She sighed. The fact that the Raikage wants me dead doesn't come as any surprise. His fear of me has been growing stronger over the last few years. In that time, he has assigned me about 8 or 9 suicide missions. She gave a cat-like grin. I had the poor grace to survive them, of course, and each time I did, his fear scent got a little stronger. I know how much you paid for my services, but you probably could have gotten the rakeage to pay you to keep me away for a year. I wish I'd known that before. Naruto said dully. You do realize that this is different, Jiraiya said. If they hand you over to Akatsuki, you won't survive. I understand that, she said calmly. But I've always understood that as a ninja my life could end at any time. There's a difference between dying because you ran into an enemy that was too strong for you and being betrayed, Naruto said angrily. Seeing him so upset for her sake gave her a sudden warm feeling. Thank you for caring, she said gratefully. But as a lightning nin I am bound by my duty to follow whatever orders my raikage gives me. You have got to be kidding me. Are you saying you're actually going to let them hand you over? Naruto demanded. Yugito gave him an unruffled nod. What else can I do? Tell them no, Jiraiya offered. Naruto nodded his firm agreement. Your village and your raikage have betrayed you, you owe them nothing. What other choice do I have? Become a missing nin and spend the rest of my life being chased not just by Akatsuki but by hunter nins as well. You don't have to become a missing nin, Naruto told her. I can offer you political asylum and make you a leaf nin. But to his very great surprise she shook her head. That would almost certainly lead to a war with lightning. The raikage may not want me, but that doesn't mean he'd want any of the other villages to have me. I won't be so cowardly and weak as to cause a war just to try and save myself. Naruto looked at her worriedly. If you won't take my offer and you won't become a missing nin, what does that leave you? It leaves me as a lightning nin with another suicide mission. She shrugged and played it off. Who knows? Maybe I'll surprise him again by coming back alive. Naruto shared a quick look with Jiraiya, who gave a slight shake of his head. Neither of them thought she would have any chance of surviving an Akatsuki trap. XXXXXXXXXX. Is something wrong, Naruto-kun? You've been awfully quiet tonight, Hinata asked as they were getting ready for bed. Naruto shook his head and gave her a tired smile. It's nothing I can discuss, I'm afraid. That was something the two of them had learned. That even though she was his wife and dearest friend, there were times he had to keep things from her because of his duties as Hokage. Hinata had learned to accept this, but being his wife and being very perceptive, she sometimes had a way of figuring things out on her own. Does this have anything to do with Yugito? He suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable for some reason. Why do you say that? She nodded. So this is about her. Huh, he looked shocked. She giggled. Naruto-kun, I love you, but sometimes you're very easy to see through. If this had nothing to do with her, you would have just answered no. Seeing the look on his face, she giggled again. So, is there anything you can tell me without putting the village in danger? He thought about it. Hinata was very clever and she had already figured out that something was going on. Maybe she could help him find some way out of this mess. All right, but what I am about to tell you is an S-rank secret. You can't share this with anyone else. She nodded. Of course. All right then, Jiraiya brought in some really troubling intelligence. He gave her a quick rundown of what had been on the scroll and then what Yugito's reaction had been. So at this point Yugito is about to be ordered to leave and there doesn't seem to be anything I can do to help. I see, Hinata said slowly. I just wish there was something I could do for her. Maybe there is, Hinata answered. She gave her husband an odd look he had never seen before. There is something I need to tell you. XXXXXXXXXX. A few days after the wedding of Shikamaru and Temari, Naruto and Yugito had just returned from the tower. As was their normal habit now that they were back in the mansion, they both headed to their own rooms. Yugito was surprised to find Hinata near her quarters, apparently waiting for her. Yugito-chan, Hinata said in a friendly tone. Could I have a word with you? Despite her outward appearance, Yugito could smell determination and worry rolling off of her. She nodded and gave a simple, sure, in reply. Once in her room with the door shut, Hinata turned to face her and wasted no time getting to the point. Do you love my husband? Yugito stared at her and felt panicked. What? Do you love my husband? Hinata repeated calmly. Love him. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a hollow-sounding chuckle. I respect him and think very highly of him and like him. But love him. I am a Jinchuriki from a foreign village. My falling in love with the Hokage would be ridiculous, like something from a silly romance novel. Whether a feeling might seem ridiculous or not has nothing to do with whether or not it is real. Hinata informed her in a steady tone. I watched as you danced with him and I have noticed the way you look at him sometimes. You hide it well, but I can tell that you care for him. Yugito had faced many difficult situations in her life. The worst had been the slow death of Junsaku-sensei. This had to be the second hardest. She broke eye contact with Hinata and looked down at the floor. Even if I felt something, I would never act on it. He is a married man and I know just how much he loves you. I know you wouldn't, Hinata said. If you were the type of woman who would, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd shut down all your chakra points and then shave off all your hair. Yugito looked back up at the still polite Hinata. Are you serious? Hinata smiled. Ask Ino about that sometime. But the point is I can see that despite your feelings you are still respectful of me and my marriage. I respect you as well Yugito, and like you. She paused for a long moment. Did you know that he can have more than one wife? The same law that allows Shinzo to have multiple wives applies to him as well. Yugito could feel her face turning red as a surge of emotion suddenly coursed through her. What do you mean? I mean just what I said, Naruto can have more than one wife. When he was away I decided that if it was necessary for the good of his clan or the village for him to marry someone else that I would accept it. I was certain of my love for him and of his for me, and since then I have only grown more certain. When he finally came home he made me a promise, without my asking for it, that I would be the only one he would ever marry. I won't lie, that promise made me very happy. But I would be willing to release him from it under the right circumstances. What sort of circumstances? Yugito asked nervously. It would have to help his clan or the village, and she would have to love him. I would never release Naruto from his promise to marry someone who was only trying to use him. When I was a little girl Kushina told me that if I wanted to be with Naruto-kun I would have to be willing to give everything for the sake of my love. And she was right. I understand now that only someone who loved him enough to do anything for him could ever be at his side. Tell me, would you bleed for him, die for him, walk through fire for him? Would you give everything that you are and ever could be, just to be with him? She swallowed. I don't know, she confessed. I don't know what it is I feel for him. I don't know if my feelings are that strong. As a ninja and as his bodyguard I am ready to die to protect him. But to give him everything. I just don't know. Inside Yugito's head a lazy voice called to her. You already know, you're just too scared to admit it. Hinata simply nodded. Well, that's honest at least. You think about it and try to figure out just exactly what your feelings really are. She turned to leave. And just so you know, Naruto doesn't know how you feel and I won't tell him. She left Yugito's room. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was staring at her completely dumbfounded. Yugito loves me. Yes, Hinata said. I'm not surprised you didn't pick up on it. She smiled fondly. You always have had a blind spot when it came to women who cared for you. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Hinata grinned. Naruto-kun, are you upset that your wife didn't point out the fact that another woman had feelings for you? Naruto looked a bit embarrassed. So what am I supposed to do about this? Do what you think is best Naruto-kun, up to and including asking her to marry you. But Hinata-chan, I made you a promise that you would be my only one. In Yugito's case I release you from your promise, she blushed a bit. I also give you permission to show her physical affection if you wish. You expect me to seduce her? He looked and sounded horrified. Hinata looked at his expression and actually burst out laughing. Naruto-kun, do you even know how to seduce someone? He immediately began to blush like a schoolgirl. What I mean is that if you need to kiss or hug her you can, you have my blessing. Hinata decided she'd spoken enough revelations for one night and soon fell asleep. Naruto remained in bed wide awake for some time. XXXXXXXXXX. The next morning he was in his office when Jiraiya burst in unannounced. A messenger from Lightning just arrived at the gates, he'll be here in a few minutes. Jiraiya told him. Naruto nodded. Jiraiya, get downstairs and meet him. Tell him some dirty jokes, do the pervy shuffle, whatever, but keep him away for an extra 5 minutes. Jiraiya nodded and got going. Naruto got on the phone and dialed Konoha Hospital. This is the Hokage, please put me in touch with my wife, it's an emergency. XXXXXXXXXX. An annoyed-looking Lightning Nin entered the Hokage's office with Jiraiya at his heel. And it turned out the girl was actually my date's twin sister. Jiraiya howled with laughter at the punchline. The Lightning Nin didn't seem to appreciate Jiraiya's sense of humor but managed a restrained laugh. Welcome to Konoha, Naruto greeted the man. May I ask the reason for your visit? The ninja looked over to Naruto a bit uncomfortably. I bring a message from the Raikage, he glanced at Jiraiya. May I deliver it to you in private? Naruto gave the man a cool smile. Lord Jiraiya is not only a Sannin but also my sensei and a trusted family friend. Whatever you have to say to me can be said in front of him. The man was obviously unhappy to hear that. It was just as obvious there was nothing he could do about it. He handed over 2 sealed scrolls to the Hokage. One of these is a message from the Raikage, the other a seal containing a sum of money. Naruto read the first scroll, and was careful to display the right amount of restrained anger. He needed to play his part. What is this? He demanded. I don't care if he is returning my full payment. We have a contract and I expect him to honor it. The Nin looked nervous but answered in a polite and unwavering voice. The Raikage appreciates that fact and humbly apologizes for the inconvenience. He hopes this will not affect the peaceful relations between our 2 villages. Breaking a contract is an insult. Not only is it an insult to me but also to the entire village of Konohagakure. The ninja offered a deep bow. The Raikage begs you not to view it as such. Unfortunately, a crucial mission has come up that only Yugito can perform. For the good of the village, the Raikage has no choice but to recall her. No choice, Naruto said flatly. I wonder about that. The ninja bowed again. With all due respect, Lord Hokage, may I speak to Yugito in private and deliver a message to her? Naruto grudgingly gave permission and had one of his receptionists show them to a small meeting room. XXXXXXXXXX. There the messenger produced a sealed and signed letter. These are orders for you from the Raikage, he whispered. Do you acknowledge the seal and signature is authentic? She looked closely at them. I do. He nodded. Read the orders and then destroy them. He turned to leave. Where are you going? He looked back at her with a relieved expression on his face. My mission is now complete. My orders were to leave the moment I had delivered the letter and had you acknowledge it as authentic. With that he left, presumably to begin the trip all the way back to their village. The condemned is left alone to face her end. She whispered to herself. She opened the message and read what was there. She nodded, not surprised, and then burned the letter. XXXXXXXXXX. Hinata was in his office, her Byakugan active. She's been given written orders just as you expected, Naruto-kun. She paused for a moment as she read what was there. Naruto-kun, she's being ordered to go to aim and assassinate the Imekage. Jiraiya whistled. Now that is a suicide mission. Being told to kill a Kage in his own village. Not that she's likely to ever get that far. She'll probably be ambushed well before she reaches the village. She is coming back, Hinata informed them. Could the two of you wait outside, please? I want to talk to her in private. He looked nervously at Hinata. Hinata-chan, are you sure you're okay with? Smiling, she leaned over and gave her husband a quick kiss on his lips. I am sure, Naruto-kun. XXXXXXXXXX. Yugito entered the office and gave him a low bow. Hokage-san, I am ordered to leave the village immediately and proceed on to a classified mission. Would you please say goodbye to everyone for me and have my belongings sent to Kumo? You have all been very kind to me, please tell them that I will miss them. She bowed again, and I especially thank you for the kindness you have shown me. It meant a great deal to me. She turned to go. Will you marry me? She froze. What did you just say? She slowly turned around. Naruto stepped out from behind his desk. He took a hold of both of her hands and looked into her eyes. Will you marry me and stay here with me? Did Hinata tell you? She asked weakly. She did, Naruto confirmed. I know you care for me, and I want you to know that I care for you too, Yugito-chan. I don't want you to die a pointless death. Will you stay here if I marry you? She stared into those amazing blue eyes. Felt the strength of his hands holding hers. Do you love me? She asked. She had to hear it. Even if it was just once. I can never love anyone the way I love Hinata-chan. He answered deliberately. But there are all sorts of love, Yugito-chan. I love my mom, I love my Nisan, I love Alyssa-chan, and I even love my pervy granddad. Each of those loves is unique and special to me. And they are all very real. I love you as well, Yugito-chan. But not in the same way that you love Hinata. She saw him struggle and quickly shook her head. No, you don't have to answer that, I already know and it doesn't matter to me. Even if it is just a little bit, hearing you say that you love me is more than enough. And then she did something she had only done once before. She pulled her hands free and wrapped her arms around him, hugging him. She pressed her face to his shoulder and began to weep tears of pure joy. Thank you for giving me this, Naruto-kun. He could feel her shaking against him. He put his own arms around her and tried to comfort her. Yugito-chan, it'll be all right. She looked up at him with her tear-stained face and smiled. I know it will. You've made me so happy, Naruto-kun. I didn't think people like you existed except in stories. You've given me more joy than I have ever known, and even if it's only for this one moment, it's enough. Yugito. I can't marry you, Naruto-kun. I can't stay here with you. Nothing in this world would make me happier, but if I stay I will put you in danger. She shook her head sadly. We both know that Akatsuki will never stop coming after me. If I remained here you'd be in danger and so would everyone else close to you. I can't do that to you. Yugito-chan, I can protect you. I have the entire village to help protect you. She shook her head again. You would still be in danger no matter what precautions you took. She looked up at him. I have to go, but can I ask you for just one thing more? Could I have a kiss? He nodded. Hinata had specifically told him it was all right, and he could see just how much this meant to her. Of course. His hands gently cradled her face and he placed his lips down on hers. She shut her eyes and let herself melt into his kiss. She could feel his tenderness and his love in it. It was warm and sweet and everything she had ever dreamed it would be. It seemed to last forever, and still ended much too soon. She opened her eyes and looked up into his. You are only the second girl I have ever kissed, he whispered to her. She smiled at him in pure contentment. And you are my one and only. She reached up and gently touched his face. I will never forget you. I love you. Though she regretted it, she let go and pulled away from him. Goodbye, Naruto-kun. She turned around and fled out of his office without turning back. XXXXXXXXXX. Jiraiya and Hinata watched her go. Naruto quickly called Jiraiya back into his office. She was crying. Just what did you say to her? Jiraiya knew that this scene would definitely appear in his next book. That's not important. Can you follow her without her or anyone else knowing it? Are you kidding? I am the great Jiraiya, the all-knowing. Naruto cut him off. Just tell me, can you follow her without being spotted by anyone or not? Jiraiya could see the kid was really serious and so answered him directly, yes I can. Alright, in that case I'm assigning you an S-rank mission. Follow Yugito. When she's attacked, contact me so I can bring reinforcements. What happens if she actually makes it all the way to the Rain Village? Naruto frowned. Don't enter aim yourself, stop outside of it and contact me. Then what? Naruto flashed him a look that was hard and unbending. Then I'll do anything I have to, even start a war. But I won't let Akatsuki kill her. 95. Ambush. It didn't take very long. Just over 100 miles from Konoha, still well inside the borders of Fire Country, Yugito came to a sudden halt. Standing before her were two people. A man with orange hair and too many facial piercings and a woman with a flower in her blue hair. Both of them wore black robes with red clouds. The three stood there for a moment facing each other silently. Yugito sniffed the air. I can smell the others, she called. You may as well have them come out too. As you wish. The orange-haired man answered. 5 more ninja, all of them in black robes with red clouds, came out of hiding surrounding her. She noted that they all seemed to have the same strange eyes. Yugito, their apparent leader, spoke. Possessor of the two-tailed demon. You are the last one I seek. If you will surrender to me, I promise you will feel no pain. This can be done either the easy way or the hard. Yugito shook her head with a laugh. You don't know anything about me, do you? With me it's always the hard way. She activated her demonic power and brought out the red chakra to take on her Nibi form. Or tried to. One of the ninjas, a heavy-set one, drew off the red chakra and seemed to absorb it. Meanwhile another one actually sent his left arm flying at her like a missile. It struck her in the belly and she was sent flying to the ground gasping for air. Before she could do anything more, the others fell upon her. XXXXXXXXXX. Jiraiya had only been a couple minutes away when he felt the battle begin, and quickly end. He'd had to stay that far away to avoid detection. Realizing something bad was happening, he rushed forward as fast as he could. He got to the scene of the battle just in time to witness 5 ninja with Akatsuki robes disappear with puffs of smoke. One of them had been holding a bloodied and unconscious Yugito. He noticed the 2 that were still present. They also noticed him. Pain nodded respectfully. It is good to see you again, Jiraiya-sensei. Nagato asked me, if I ever saw you again, to tell you that he loved you. Jiraiya stared open-mouthed. Yahiko, he looked over at the young woman. Conan, it really is, you're alive. Where is Nagato? He is dead. Pain said nothing more. Yahiko, you're the leader of Akatsuki. The man shook his head. There is no Yahiko, there is only Pain. But I am the leader of Akatsuki. Jiraiya shook his head. There were so many questions. How can you have the Rinnegan? What exactly happened to Nagato? Why did you join Akatsuki? What are you doing with Yugito and the Biju you have collected? Pain stood where he was and looked at his older teacher calmly. I will tell you this much, Jiraiya-sensei. Yugito is on her was to aim as am I. In 4 days I will complete the final ritual and bring forth on this earth the ultimate weapon, one before which no power can hope to stand. I intend to create a creature born of the chakra of all the living Biju, a creature with infinite power who will carry out my will. With such power at my disposal, all the nations will bend knee to me, or they will be destroyed in an instant. There will finally be peace, my peace. Jiraiya stared at his former student in horror. The prophesy, you're going to destroy the world. Yahiko, have you gone mad? There is no Yahiko, only Pain. I don't give a damn what you call yourself. Jiraiya shouted at him. Have you gone insane? Do you think you are Kami? However much power you have, you are only mortal. Do you really think the heavens will allow you to play God without making you pay the price? What you are attempting to do is far beyond what any mortal should ever even dream of. If you try and do this, you will not only cause your own death but the deaths of everyone. You will destroy the world. At her sensei's words, Conan appeared a bit nervous and looked over at Pain, but said nothing. Pain looked at his old teacher with disappointment. You don't understand. But how could you? How could an old man who only cares about the flesh understand my dream for bringing the world lasting peace? You'll bring peace, all right. Jiraiya said grimly. But it will be the peace of the graveyard. Pain nodded to his partner. She cast a jutsu and a pair of large wings made of paper sprouted from her back. She grabbed a hold of Pain's shoulders and together they flew up into the air. Out of respect, I will not attack you, Jiraiya-sensei. He called out as they left. Tell your Hokage to surrender when I call on him, or Fire Country will pay the price. They were flying away quickly and Jiraiya knew he would never catch them now. The ninjas who had taken Yugito had left him no trail to follow. So it comes to this, he whispered sadly. XXXXXXXXXX. In his office, Naruto sat quietly in his chair. 4 days, huh? That's what he said, and I don't think he was lying. Jiraiya answered quietly. And Pain really believes that he can take 8 immortal creatures and somehow make them into his pet. Naruto shivered at the unbelievable arrogance. Compared to this, Orochimaru seemed about as ambitious as a 60-year-old librarian. There was another drawn-out silence. Naruto, we have to act. If we don't, the world ends. Naruto finished for him. I know, Granddad, but I thought I should take a moment before I plunged my country into war. He pressed a button on his desk. Yes, Naruto. Shizune's voice came through. Shizune, I need some people to come in for an emergency meeting. XXXXXXXXXX. They were in the meeting room going over plans to mobilize the forces of Konoha and the Grand Alliance to launch an immediate strike against Rain Country. When we leave, I want you to remain here in charge, Shikamaru. Naruto informed him. Shikamaru sighed. That's going to be troublesome. Kiba laughed. More troublesome than taking Rain Village. Kakashi shook his head. Kiba, try and take this seriously, a war is nothing to laugh about. He's right, kid. Jiraiya nodded. Take it from someone who's been in one and knows. Hey, Kiba complained. I've seen war too. I fought when Sound and Sand attacked. Jiraiya nodded, acknowledging his point. All right, but this is likely to be a whole lot worse. And even if we win, we won't pull this off cheaply. Does it really have to be this way, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked quietly. Isn't there some other way to rescue Yugito? Naruto shook his head. Pain is the Amekage, and I'm sure he'll use every last ninja at his disposal to protect this final ceremony. This is just too important to take any chances. We have to succeed no matter the cost. Kushina nodded her approval. I understand your concerns, Hinata. But Naruto is right, sometimes war is the only solution. Just how many ninja do you plan on taking? Shikamaru asked. About 1,000, plus whatever forces our allies can toss in. You know, Naruto, with the time limit we're under, there's no way Suna can send us anything in time. Jiraiya pointed out. I know, but Waterfall, Grass, and Star are close enough to support us. Altogether, I doubt they'll be able to give us even 50 ninja. Jiraiya said pragmatically. It might not even be worth the trouble. They're in just as much danger as we are, even if they don't know it. The whole point of the Grand Alliance is that we fight to defend each other. Naruto answered. They're our allies and it's only right that they help. There was a knock from the door and an Anbu stuck his head in. Hokage-sama, Captain Tenzo is here. Naruto nodded. Send him in. Yamato entered and quickly walked up to Naruto. Naruto noticed that his smile was somehow off. He was about to comment on that when a short sword popped out of Yamato's sleeve. Before he could even move, Yamato had plunged the sword all the way into Naruto's chest and through his heart. Everyone was frozen for an initial second. It was Kushina who recovered first. You bastard. In less than 2 seconds, her katana had come out and severed Yamato's head from his shoulders and sent it bouncing across the room as blood gushed out of his neck. XXXXXXXXXX. All around him people were screaming, but he couldn't seem to make out what they were saying. There was a horrible pain and he could see the sword's handle sticking out of his chest. With the pain, he felt his body shake with a sudden weakness. As he began to collapse, someone caught him. Looking up, he was not surprised, of course it would be her. Her beautiful eyes held such a look of horror. With his last bit of strength, he reached up and touched her cheek. With his last breath, he whispered her name. Hinata. Then he fell into the blackness. XXXXXXXXXX. Author's note, well, I do like to surprise people. Before any of you say it, 1. Yes, I am evil. 2. I promise to update soon. 96. The 7th Hokage. Author's notes, I told you I would update soon. I am going to try and wrap everything up by chapter 100. XXXXXXXXXX. The main lobby of Konoha Hospital. A few nurses worked behind the main desk answering questions and handing out forms. It was a slow day. There were just the usual handfuls of minor accidents and ailments. People quietly came in and politely approached the desk to ask to be helped. Then in the middle of the lobby, 2 Shunshuns materialized. Kushina was holding her son in her arms. He was still dressed in his bloodied robes of state. Hinata was standing right in front of her, her face was spattered in blood, her hands soaked in it. Those hands were both planted over her husband's wound. Hinata's face snapped around to the nurses on duty. Clear operating room 1 for immediate surgery. Get Neji down here and Shizune should be here any minute. I also want a full medical team on standby and plenty of type of blood. Now, the look on her face promised abrupt pain or worse if she were not immediately obeyed. The nurses jumped to do as they were told as Kushina and Hinata ran down the hall towards operating room. In the lobby there were shouts and loud disjointed questions and statements. It would not be long before everyone in Konoha heard that the Hokage had been brought to the hospital for emergency surgery. XXXXXXXXXX. Back in the meeting room in the tower. Jiraiya picked up Yamato's severed head by the hair. He performed a negation sign with his other hand. The appearance of both the head and body changed. The clothing and headgear remained the same. They were what Yamato usually liked to wear. The skin though was much paler, and it was clear that the person had actually been far younger, maybe around 16 or so. The face was still wearing an odd smile. Just as I thought, Jiraiya said. I know Yamato well from our time together. I knew he would never betray Naruto. He sighed. Now we have to find out who the hell this is. Kakashi took a quick look. I can help you with that. Do tell. His code name is Sai, and he was one of Danzo's most trusted agents. Really? Jiraiya took a close look at the severed head. Was he the kind of agent who would take on a suicide mission with a zero chance of survival? Kakashi shrugged. I didn't really know him that well, but all root agents are fanatics. He seemed a bit more so than the others. Sounds to me like he was the perfect candidate for something like this. I wonder what Danzo would say if we were to talk to him. Jiraiya said. I'm guessing he'd probably say something along the lines of, Sai did that. He must have snapped and acted on his own. Was the boy strong in genjutsu? Jiraiya asked. Kakashi shrugged again. I don't believe so, but like I said, I didn't really know him. Jiraiya nodded. He didn't use a simple hench. If he had, one of us likely would have spotted it. He used a high-level genjutsu in combination with wearing the same style of clothing as Yamato. The genjutsu didn't end when he was killed, which can only mean someone else cast it. He must have had help. Also, what happened to the real Yamato? Shikamaru had been sitting in a chair during all this. He had shut his eyes and was making an "oh" with his hands as he thought. He finally stopped and opened his eyes. That isn't the important question right now. Jiraiya and Kakashi both looked over at him. The important question is, what else is going to happen? Shikamaru clarified. What do you mean? Kakashi asked. Jiraiya nodded slightly. He was looking underneath the underneath. You don't think killing Naruto was the ultimate aim in all this? Shikamaru shook his head. No, I don't. He stood up from the chair. If it was, Danzo wouldn't have used someone who was a known agent of his. Even if there is no actual evidence, if Naruto dies, there are a lot of powerful people who would avenge him: you, Kakashi, his mom, Hiashi, Hinata, Hiku, and even me. Danzo has to know he could never survive. So why was he willing to sacrifice this Sai character to try and kill Naruto? Maybe he's willing to trade his own life for Naruto's. Kakashi offered. Shikamaru again shook his head. I don't think so. You don't get to reach his age as a ninja unless you have a strong survival streak. My guess is Danzo not only expects to survive this but to profit from it. Which he can't do without a radical change in the power structure of this village. Jiraiya spoke quietly. Kakashi suddenly looked a bit alarmed. Are you talking about a coup attempt? Shikamaru nodded. It's the only thing that makes sense. If we go on the assumption that Naruto's death is a means and not an end. If that's true, Danzo will have to move very quickly to establish his position. If he really means to take control of the village, he will have to move within the next 24 hours. Jiraiya stated. The door opened and a winded Kiba came back in. I finally found Shizune. She has gone to the hospital. Jiraiya nodded. What should we do now? Kakashi, Jiraiya said. Try and find out what happened to the real Yamato. Right, Kakashi wasted no time and performed a shunshin. Wait, that wasn't Yamato, Kiba exclaimed. Jiraiya looked over to Shikamaru. Fill him in on everything we discussed. Both of you should go to the hospital to check on Naruto. But first drop by your clans and tell them what happened, make sure they understand what side they're on. What do you mean what side? Kiba looked confused. Also, Jiraiya continued, ignoring him. Stop by the Hyuga mansion and tell Hiashi. While you're there, ask him to provide security for Naruto at the hospital. Isn't that usually the ANBU's job? Kiba asked. Jiraiya frowned. As of right now, the entire ANBU is suspect. The Hyuga have a close relationship with Naruto and stand to lose a great deal if he doesn't survive. I think they can be trusted, if anyone can. And what are you going to do? Shikamaru asked. Jiraiya grinned. I'm going to do what I do best. Shikamaru sighed. This isn't the time for you to go peeping at the bathhouse. Jiraiya sent him a very flat look. I'm going to go spy. With that, he disappeared in a swirl of wind and leaves. Kiba sent Shikamaru an annoyed glare. I was only gone 5 minutes. Just what the hell did I miss? Troublesome, he grabbed Kiba's arm and led him out. Come on, I'll explain on the way to the Hyuga mansion. XXXXXXXXXX. The phone in his study rang. Ryuki deliberately allowed it to ring 3 times before answering. Hello. Ryuki, a familiar voice sounded strained. Some terrible news is going through the village and I just learned of it. The Hokage was attacked in the tower. That's terrible. He tried to make sure his voice sounded properly high-pitched. Is the Hokage all right? I've contacted the hospital, but I'm afraid I have no information at the moment. We have to consider that this could be the prelude to an attack. As such, I am calling an emergency meeting of the council at my home. Can you come over immediately? Of course, I'll be right there. He hung up. In the privacy of his study, Ryuki smiled. So far everything was going according to plan. XXXXXXXXXX. An emergency meeting, Choji asked. XXXXXXXXXX. Well, of course, I'll be right over. Asuma replied. XXXXXXXXXX. Your concerns are only logical. I shall be at your home shortly, Shibi stated. XXXXXXXXXX. The small bell at the door jingled merrily. Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop. Ino sang out. Hello, Ino. Her uncle Michio looked grim. Uncle Michio, what are you doing here? I've come to let you know, Ino, that as the clan head I have decided to replace you as our representative on the council. Ino looked surprised but not really upset. At first, being a council member had been a thrill. But then she'd discover how long and boring the meetings were. Well, that's fine, uncle, but does that mean you've changed your feelings about Naruto? Not exactly. I take it you haven't heard the news yet. She immediately took on a worried look. What news? The Hokage was attacked and is now in the hospital undergoing surgery. An emergency meeting of the council has been called and that's where I'm going right now. Naruto-kun was attacked. Is he alright? I honestly don't know. Ino immediately began shouting for her mom to come take over the counter so she could go to the hospital. All thoughts about the council were immediately lost. XXXXXXXXXX. The meeting of the council of Konoha was held in Danzo's dining room around his dinner table. Naruto had appointed Shikamaru as president of the council. Since he was absent, they went by seniority, which made Danzo the temporary leader. We currently have 8 council members present: myself, Koharu, Homura, Ryuki, Asuma, Choji, Shibi, and Michio. Danzo began. Asuma looked at Michio. I'm surprised to see you here. What happened to Ino? Nothing, Michio replied. I am clan head of the Yamanaka and I simply chose to represent my clan. I do have that right. Asuma shrugged. I never said you didn't, I'm just surprised to see you, that's all. I decided that in this vital time I should be here, Michio stated. We all recognize your right to be at this council meeting, Danzo stated. Now, since we have 8 members present, that is half the council and enough for a quorum, so we will be able to pass laws at this meeting. Aren't we going to wait for the other members? Choji asked. Unfortunately, in all the chaos I was unable to reach the others, Danzo said smoothly. Given the tremendous danger of this being a possible prelude to an attack, I suggest we get to work immediately. There were nods up and down the table at what seemed a very reasonable suggestion. Koharu raised her hand and was acknowledged by Danzo. I feel our first order of business should be to assign someone the authority of Hokage while our current leader is incapacitated. Since the 6th Hokage did not name a successor, by law we must choose one. Asuma was surprised that naming a successor would be the first thing brought up. Isn't that? I formally nominate Uchiha Ryuki as successor and acting Hokage while the current Hokage is incapacitated. Homura jumped in. I second the motion, Michio said. Very well, I call the question, Danzo said. Asuma jumped to his feet. The council normally spent hours talking about even the most insignificant issues. Wait a minute, we need to discuss. All in favor raise your hand. Danzo pushed ahead. Koharu, Homura, Ryuki, and Michio raised their hands. All opposed. Asuma, Choji, and Shibi raised hands. By a vote of 5-3, the motion is passed into law. Danzo nodded and in a swift and certain motion turned to Ryuki. Uchiha Ryuki, it is the will of the council that you be the successor of the current Hokage and act with the full authority of Hokage until such time as he has recovered. Will you accept? Ryuki nodded slowly as though stunned by the turn of events. I cannot refuse this duty in this terrible hour of need. I accept and promise to do the very best that I can for Konoha. Danzo rose from his chair and gave Ryuki a deep informal bow. Hokage-sama. Koharu stood and bowed. Hokage-sama. Homura, Hokage-sama. Michio jumped to his feet and smiled happily as he bowed. Hokage-sama. The 5 of them looked over to the other 3. That custom is traditionally performed only after the death of a Hokage, Shibi crisply pointed out. Unsure of himself, Choji began to stand. Asuma gave him a look and the boy immediately sat back down again. I will not recognize you as Hokage while Naruto lives, Asuma growled. And maybe not after either. That is all right, Asuma, I will not take offense. Ryuki now stood. I thank all of you for the faith you have shown in me. I promise I will not let you down. Now, given how serious our circumstances are, I feel our priority needs to be to establish order and reassure our citizens that everything is under control. Therefore, as my first action as acting Hokage, I am declaring, per Article 7 of the Constitution, the dissolution of this council. As of this moment, I am declaring a state of emergency and placing Konohagakure under martial law. You can't do that, Asuma shouted. Actually, he can't, Danzo corrected. Until Naruto's recovery from his attack, Ryuki is entrusted with all the powers of Hokage. I for one am glad for his strong leadership in this time of crisis. Ryuki nodded appreciatively. Thank you, Danzo, and to show the faith I have in your abilities is my second act 1 am placing you in charge of the entire Anbu. Danzo looked as though he were just shocked but quickly recovered. Thank you Hokage-sama, I promise you my complete faith and loyalty. Ryuki nodded and then smiled. As my third act 1 am hereby revoking the law which established the so-called internal security force. The Hyuga clan will not be permitted to carry out investigations or arrests. All police powers will revert back to the Anbu and the military police, as is proper. Both of which you now control either through Danzo or your clan. Asuma gave each of the 5 of them a hard look. You are all either vultures taking advantage of the situation or much worse, you are traitors. He turned to go. Asuma, Ryuki shouted. Asuma halted and looked back at the man. Yes Ryuki. I realize you are feeling the stress of the situation. As such I will forget your insult and its implications. Don't, Asuma answered. He lit a fresh cigarette and popped it into his mouth. Because if it turns out that you're traitors I will be coming after you. With that he did leave. Choji quickly excused himself and followed his former teacher. Shibi stood. Seeing as the council has been dissolved and as we no longer have a quorum present I shall leave as well. With Shibi gone the 5 of them relaxed. Not noticing the insects that he had left behind. Asuma is going to be trouble. Kaharu said darkly. Danzo shook his head. Sarutobi is an empty clan. He will come around, or he will be dealt with. The important thing is that Ryuki is now Hokage. Acting Hokage, as long as Naruto is alive everything remains in jeopardy. Ryuki said. Why hasn't he died yet? Danzo seemed unconcerned. His wife is the finest medic nin in Konoha, apprentice to the legendary Tsunade. Add to that he has a limited healing ability, as such he was expected to be difficult to kill. Ryuki sent the man a dark look. Before I agreed to this you told me you guaranteed his death with 100% certainty. If he survives we will all be executed. Naruto will not survive. Rest assured that he will not make it through the night. By the time the morning comes you will be the 7th Hokage. XXXXXXXXXX. Several minutes later as Danzo's guests departed several bugs found their way out and then found their way back to their host. Shibi held out his hand and collected the insects. Tell me everything, he commanded. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was in surgery for 4 hours as Konoha's 3 best medic nins struggled to bring him back from the edge. Hinata, Neji, and Shizune poured in their chakra and worked feverishly to keep him alive as they repaired his damaged heart. XXXXXXXXXX. When the surgery was finally completed he was wheeled into a large private room on a gurney. Along with 2 attendants he was accompanied by a weary-looking Neji, a tired Shizune, and a completely exhausted Hinata. Outside the room 3 members of the Hyuga clan with ISF badges stood guard. Inside the room Kushina, Seishu, Shinzo, Alyssa, Anko, Haku, Gabriella, Kiba, Tayuya, Shikamaru, and Tamari all waited. The room was rather full, but no one was willing to leave. Down in the lobby a large crowd had gathered. As soon as Naruto was brought in Kushina rushed to his side. He was unconscious and breathing on his own. A heart monitor seemed to reveal a steady heartbeat. How is he? Kushina asked desperately. Though completely spent Hinata lifted her weary head. Thanks to Neji and Shizune we were able to fully repair his heart while keeping his blood flowing. That's wonderful. A relieved Kushina cried out. Her sudden joy was short-lived as she saw the sorrow on the faces of the 3 surgeons. Wait, isn't it? Hinata slowly shook her head. If the wound were the only issue Naruto-kun would be in stable condition now. Wait, there was something else beside the wound. There is a powerful toxin infecting Naruto's heart and arterial system. Neji said with a look of worry. The blade must have been coated with poison. None of us have ever seen a poison quite like this one. Shizune said. Nothing we've tried can neutralize it. Hinata nodded wearily. And it's completely resistant to being removed. It's become merged with Naruto-kun's tissue. There is no way to separate it from his cell structure. Then what can be done? Kushina asked. Neji and Shizune looked at each other. I don't know, Hinata began to weep. We've tried everything and nothing seems to work, and he's getting weaker. The girl seemed on the verge of completely breaking down. Kushina put her arms around her and hugged her close. It's all right dear, I know you'll do your best. Kushina fought down her own rising hysteria and panic and instead concentrated on trying to help Hinata cope. Gabriella looked at her husband. I'm going to the hospital shrine to make an offering to Kami. You really think that will help? Shikamaru asked. Well it won't hurt, Gabriella answered. I'll come with you honey. Haku said. Tamari, Seishu, and Alyssa also decided to make offerings. XXXXXXXXXX. What are you doing here? Tenzo looked up from his desk. Oh, hello Kakashi-senpai. Kakashi just stared at him. I've been looking for you for about 5 hours now. Really? Tenzo looked surprised. Well why didn't you come to my office first? To be honest it was the last place I thought I would find you. Kakashi didn't mention that the first place he'd looked was the morgue. Have you actually been doing paperwork this whole time? Tenzo made an unhappy face. I'm afraid so. I take it you never got the Hokage's message to meet him. Tenzo looked worried. Did I miss something important? Naruto's not mad at me, is he? Kakashi let out a sigh. Come on, I'll explain everything on the way. XXXXXXXXXX. When Kakashi and Yamato entered the room, Kushina had very nearly attacked him. Only a quick explanation from Kakashi had avoided unnecessary bloodshed. Not long after their arrival, Jiraiya had shown up with Shibi beside him. Kushina, Shikamaru, Kakashi, and Yamato, we need to talk. Jiraiya led them up to the hospital roof where a quiet conversation was held. After I left the tower, I suspected that if Danzo were plotting something, he would probably try to use the council somehow. I was just able to contact Shibi before he left for the council meeting. What council meeting? Kushina demanded. Danzo called for an emergency meeting in his home. Jiraiya explained. Interesting how neither Kushina nor I were contacted. Shikamaru said dryly. Let me guess, there were only 8 council members present. Just enough to meet quorum. Shibi nodded. Your guess is accurate. Shibi then proceeded to relate everything that had occurred in the meeting and afterwards. Along with this, Jiraiya and Yamato decided to reveal what they had learned following their investigations. They mentioned the secret meetings of Ryuki, Danzo, Kaharu, and Homura. They also related the corruption of much of the Anbu by Danzo's faction. But through all this, what made Kushina grind her teeth was the thought of Ryuki trying to kill her son in order to become Hokage. Ryuki would never achieve that on ability, so he had decided to use a poison sword. Ryuki, that son of a bitch, Kushina growled. Those damn bloody Uchihas, except for Gabriella. Jiraiya sighed. It seems that Ryuki and Danzo are trying to pull off a coup without resorting to an actual uprising. What they did with the council was actually rather neat. They found a legal way to put their man in charge and even give him emergency powers. Jiraiya shook his head sadly. He might even pull it off. Like hell he will. Kushina snapped. That bastard will never be Hokage. Having heard more than enough, she stormed away. XXXXXXXXXX. A short time later, she had gathered Seishu and Shinzo in an unoccupied hospital room. She quickly gave them an abbreviated version of what she'd been told on the roof. Bastards, Seishu muttered furiously. Shinzo nodded his agreement with that sentiment. They're traitors. Through generations of war and strife, the Uzumaki had always held firm to one concept: loyalty. To the Uzumaki, oaths and family bonds were sacred. Nothing could ever excuse breaking an oath or turning your back on family. To the Uzumaki clan, betrayal was the one unforgivable sin. Kushina looked carefully at her uncle and brother. We 3 are the last of the Uzumaki who were born in Whirlpool. I taught my son many of our traditions, but not all of them. I had honestly hoped that he would have no use for our bloodier ones. It seems Konoha is not so different after all. Wherever you go in this world, you will always find treachery. Seishu said sadly. Shinzo was studying her carefully. Tell us what it is you want, little sister. She took a deep breath. The Uchihas have been after my son since the day of his birth. He never did a thing to any Uchiha unless he was fighting for his life, but they've come after him without pity all the same. Fugaku, Itachi, Sasuke, and now finally Ryuki. Despite all their hatred, he deliberately went out of his way to be fair to them, and this was his reward. She shook her head violently. If Naruto dies, I don't want to live. I lost my dearest love once, I couldn't bear that a second time. Hinata has the Namikaze name and the son she carries will continue it. She is a good strong girl and she'll have her father and the rest of her family to help her through. She looked at her kinsman. Ryuki is not going to profit from my son's murder. He will never be Hokage. I'll see him burning in hell first. You want to declare a vendetta? Seishu said. He was not asking a question. Kushina nodded. As my bloodkin, I ask you to join me, but if you choose not to, I will accept that. Seishu nodded without hesitation. I am an old man, I can think of no better way to end my days than dying to avenge my kinsman. Kushina looked to her brother. If you don't want to, I understand. You have 2 newborn sons with no one to teach them what it means to be Uzumaki. And you have a woman you love very much. If we do this, we probably die, and if we somehow escape, we'll spend the rest of our lives as missing nin. That's true, Shinzo agreed. But Naruto is blood of my blood. And even more than that, he is the one who rescued me from my own hell. I could never live in peace if I let my nephew go unavenged. Are you sure? Kushina asked. I have to, but I am the boy's uncle Kushina, and I know what it means to be an Uzumaki. His murderer will not go unpunished. Kushina slowly nodded. It was his choice, and they were Uzumaki. She took out a kunai. If my son dies, then I swear that I shall not rest until Uchiha Ryuki is dead. From this life into the next, I shall not rest until his blood is upon my blade. She cut deeply into her palm and let the blood spill out onto the floor. She handed the kunai to her brother. If Naruto dies, then I swear that Ryuki will die. From this life into the next, I shall not rest until his blood is upon my blade. He cut deep into his palm and then handed the kunai to his uncle. I swear that if Naruto dies, then so will the Uchiha. From this life into the next, I shall not rest until his blood is upon my blade. He sliced open his palm and then returned the blade to Kushina. We have sworn vendetta. She wiped the blade clean. It was done. XXXXXXXXXX. Hinata wiped his feverish forehead. He had a temperature and his pulse was beginning to rise. She knew the infection was getting worse. While she was keeping an eye on Naruto, Neji and Shizune were busy analyzing the poison from the blade, seeing if they could find some clue towards an antidote. They'd had no luck so far, but she had hope. The possibility that fate was repeating itself was not lost on her. She was a woman who loved a brave Hokage with all her heart. And now she was watching him as he faced an untimely death. She also faced the possibility of raising a son who would never know his father except through stories. Leaning down, she whispered into his ear. Please fight Naruto-kun, I can't bear to lose you. I need you and so does your son, he needs you very much. She offered up a silent prayer to Kami that something would happen to allow him to survive. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto opened his eyes. He was lying in a field. It seemed to be winter. It felt cold and windy. Up above the sky was an endless gray. There were clumps of dead flowers and the grass was all brown and withered. What an ugly place, he muttered to himself. Everything you see here is a reflection of your own mind. A deep voice rumbled. I suppose you're not in a good mood. But then most people who are dying aren't. Naruto sat up and stared. There was no sign of the collapsed fortress. Instead there was just a gigantic fox lying asleep and curled up like a puppy, his 9 tails wrapped around his feet. As Naruto stared, a single huge red eye slowly opened. That was the only movement as the fox seemed barely awake. Naruto got to his feet. He didn't just feel cold, he felt weakened, and there was a pain in his chest. This is impossible, you were taken out of me. Is this some kind of nightmare? The fox let out a slight chuckle. Naruto was amazed to find the Kyuubi could chuckle. Oh, it is a nightmare all right, but it is also real enough. In our years together we formed a connection that was too strong to be broken except by death. And now you are in the same place I am, so the connection is strong enough to let us communicate. What place, where is this exactly? You mortal are in a place that hangs between life and death, as am I. Then to Naruto's amazement the fox actually laughed. It seems that the great powers have a sense of humor even crueler than my own. I don't understand what is so funny. What? You cannot see the joke. For all the years I was imprisoned in your belly you were the symbol of my eventual death. You had the power to destroy me by simply dying. And now, you can die and it will do nothing to me. But you are my only hope of salvation, you mortal worm have been transformed into a symbol of salvation. The laughter came again. Can you see the joke now, mortal? Naruto frowned. Stop calling me, mortal, my name is Naruto, you stupid baka fox. The laughter abruptly cut off and the eye squinted. You know, mortal, even though it would mean my own death if I had the energy, I think I would eat you right now. I've wanted to eat you for a very, very, very long time. He didn't like the eagerness in the fox's voice. No longer certain if the old rules applied anymore, Naruto took a few steps back. Why don't we focus on the whole me being your salvation thing? What exactly do you mean? The fox's eye opened a bit more. I mean exactly that, mortal. You can save me, just as I can save you. I don't need you to save me. Are you certain of that, mortal? Naruto was about to tell the fox yes when he remembered something. He put a hand over his chest. I was stabbed. Stabbed and poisoned. The fox confirmed. Your mate healed your wound, but healing the poison is beyond her abilities. She is watching as you fall towards death. And you will save me if I save you. Yes, and by saving me you can also save the other female you want to mate with and your whole world, of course. Is that sufficient for you? Naruto stared at the Kyuubi. He knew the bastard fox better than anyone alive, and didn't trust him. But in their conversations he had noticed that the fox never actually told a lie. And the truth was he didn't have a real choice. He couldn't save Yugito and the rest of the world if he died. What do I have to do? He asked carefully. Simple, we must make a contract. Now listen carefully, mortal, I am ready to bargain with you. 97. For the Hokage. Author's note, for any of you who may be interested, I have started posting a fantasy story on fictionpress.com. It is listed in the fantasy section and the title is The Girl with the Red Eyes. The address for it is www.fictionpress.com/s2520841/1. The story has nothing to do with Naruto or any other anime and is totally original. XXXXXXXXXX. Kushina reached down and gently touched her son's forehead. He was hot. She heard the small wheezing as he breathed in and out. She looked at the heart monitor and saw his heartbeat was rising. She saw the way Hinata looked at him as she held his hand. She understood, though no one would say the actual words. Naruto was slipping away. She looked around the crowded hospital room. Even though it was now nighttime and visiting hours had long been over, no one had left. In fact, more people had come. Rock Lee had arrived and told everyone not to worry, Naruto's flames of youth were too strong to ever be put out. Asuma, Choji, and Ino had come together. Ino had brought a beautiful flower arrangement and immediately offered to do anything she could for Hinata. Kushina looked at all the people who were here now. They were all family or dear friends to her son, and they all loved him. She was so glad to have them here. They were living proof that her son mattered to people. Had she gone down to the lobby, she would have found a crowd filling it and spilling out into the street, all of them praying that their Hokage would be all right. Outside the room there was sudden loud shouting. Kushina, Kakashi, and Jiraiya quickly opened the door to find the three Hyuga facing four Anbu in masks. It was quite obvious that things between them were heated. The door was open and everyone inside was looking out into the hall. What the hell is going on out here? Kushina demanded. One of the Hyuga turned to her. Kushina-san, these men are ordering us to leave our posts. They say they will take over guarding the Hokage and that we have no authority to do so. An Anbu in a ram's mask immediately stepped forward. That's right, the Hokage has ordered the ISF disbanded and sent us here to provide security. Kushina snapped a finger into the room. Your Hokage did no such thing. Feeling her killer intent and the killer intent of the others, the Anbu took a nervous step back. Stand aside, Kushina, an old woman's voice spoke. Kaharu came forward to face her. We are here to carry out the orders given unto us by the Hokage. My son gave no such orders. I am referring to the acting Hokage, Uchiha Ryuki. She held out an official document. I have a signed and sealed order to. Kushina snatched the paper out of her hand and tore it up. I've heard about the secret meeting of Danzo's and Ryuki's little promotion. If you think that bastard has any authority here, you're kidding yourself. Show some respect, Kaharu demanded. Ryuki is the acting Hokage and will someday be the 7th Hokage. I know what Ryuki is, Kushina spat. And it's not Hokage. I have had a husband, a dear friend, and my son be Hokage. Ryuki is not fit to wash their feet. How dare you? Kaharu shouted. Stand aside and go home. Visiting hours are over. The Anbu will ensure your son's safety. It was an Anbu that tried to kill him. Kushina answered. Stand aside, Kushina, clan head or not, if you disobey the Hokage's order you will be arrested. Are you sure you want to try that? Jiraiya said in a friendly voice. You might want to get quite a few more Anbu first. Or I suppose you could use a genjutsu, you are still proficient with those, aren't you? She sent Jiraiya a glare. I am a genjutsu mistress and my skills have not diminished. I'm sure they haven't, Jiraiya said quietly. Kaharu looked back angrily at Kushina, ready to argue when a sudden commotion came from the hospital room. XXXXXXXXXX. So what do you want? Naruto asked warily. I want you to save me. The Kyuubi answered simply. Once we have a contract, all you need do is summon me. It is a universal law that I cannot refuse a summons, my prison would no longer be able to hold me. I can't believe the Kyuubi is actually offering to become my summons. So I'll be able to summon you. Yes, and all foxes will also answer to you. And that's all you want from me. All. The big fox sounded annoyed. Do you think it a small thing? I am the Kyuubi. I am immortal and all-powerful. Oh really? Then how did you end up getting trapped not once but twice? The fox squinted his eye and glared. Are you wanting to be eaten? Naruto shook his head. So is that your only condition? The Kyuubi thought for a moment. I am the lord of all foxes. Do everything you can to protect foxes on your world. Naruto grinned. You know, it almost sounds like you actually care. The fox in turn looked a bit surprised. Of course I care, unlike you wretched humans, foxes are noble creatures. In any case, those are my terms. Naruto nodded. If those are your terms, then I accept them. Here are mine. I want full access to your chakra whenever I need it. No more having to get angry and no losing control no matter how much of it I draw. I agree to that, but your frail body still has limits. You cannot draw an unlimited supply of chakra. Fine, as much as my body can safely handle. I want all my children and descendants to have the same healing ability I have, including my son. Do you not also want them to have access to the red chakra? The fox was very surprised to see Naruto violently shake his head. Hell no, that's way too much power for an entire clan to wield. I want to protect my children and my descendants, but I don't want to poison them with ideas that they're superior. The last thing I want is to turn my clan into the Uchihas. He thought about it. There should never be more than 2 members who can wield the red chakra and summon you. One to use the power and the other to learn it responsibly. Very well. Only those with my blood can ever summon you. As long as the Namikaze clan exists, only clan members may summon you. If the clan should ever disappear, then you can choose any of my descendants. You may never harm or threaten me, my children, or any of my descendants. The fox grinned a bit. So I can't eat them. No, Naruto shouted. The fox chuckled a bit. I agree. Naruto sent the fox a cold smile. My last condition, you may not come to Earth unless you are summoned. Should all those with my blood ever die out, you are permanently forbidden from coming. The fox's eye expanded. No, your world is a glorious playground for me, one that has given me endless delights. I refuse to give it up. Playground. Maybe that's how you see it. Reading through history, your visits are recorded as great tragedies, almost apocalypses. Every 100 years or so you appear and bring death and devastation to some part of the world. Well, no more. If you are the summons of the Namikaze clan, then you are also our responsibility. I refuse this condition. Then I won't make a contract with you. You would let the female you care for die. You would allow the world to die. Naruto faced the Kyuubi. If I agree to this, then I and all those of my line are responsible for your actions on Earth. That is a responsibility that I cannot ignore. When my father locked you inside me, he entrusted me to protect not just the village but the whole world from your evil. That was always my curse, that was always my honor. It is my obligation and I will keep it. If you become the Namikaze summons, you'll be only that. His lips pulled back in a feral smile. And to be honest, Kyuubi, I think you're too afraid of your own death to refuse. You dare. Both eyes opened and the great fox's head snaked forward and hung above Naruto menacingly. The jaws opened and he could see rows of sharp teeth and feel the heat of the fox's breath. You dare call me a coward, you pathetic mortal worm. I think I really will eat you. Kill me and you kill yourself. Naruto stood where he was. Looking up at all those teeth, he wondered if the fox really would do it. For a long moment the fox glared down at him. And then the jaws shut. Very well, I agree to your terms. Naruto nodded and let out a long breath. The Kyuubi brought one of his paws to his mouth and bit down, letting blood flow from it. He set the paw down in front of Naruto. We have reached an agreement. Now mix your blood with mine and our contract is made. Something occurred to him. Wait, what about the frog summoning contract? A mortal may only have one contract. The instant ours is made, your signature on the frog summoning contract will disappear. That's a shame, I'm going to miss summoning Gamakichi. Very well. He took out a kunai and cut his hand. He took his hand and pressed it down into the Kyuubi's wound, letting their blood mix together. It is done. The fox growled. Our contract is made. With that the red chakra flowed out of the Kyuubi's wound and into him. Now live Namikaze Naruto, summoner of the Kyuubi and Lord of Foxes. XXXXXXXXXXX. Without warning, Naruto suddenly went into convulsions. His body began to shake wildly and heart rate spiked. Hinata was on her feet trying to hold him down. Everyone was suddenly standing and talking at once. Haku and Shinzo were helping Hinata try and hold him. Kushina and the others ran back into the room. What's going on? I don't know, Hinata answered fearfully. He's gone into convulsions. From the doorway Kaharu looked on silently. She was very careful not to let the hope she was feeling appear on her face. As quickly as they had come, the convulsions suddenly stopped and Naruto lay peacefully in his bed. Then they saw the red chakra. They all yanked their hands back. But I thought. Kushina looked over to Jiraiya. How is this possible? Don't look at me, I have no clue. Jiraiya said. What the hell is that? Kiba pointed to the bandages covering Naruto's wound. A huge black spot like spilled ink had suddenly appeared. Hinata looked at the heart monitor. Naruto's heartbeat had slowed down to a safe rate and looked steady. I think, her voice was shaking with feeling. I think the red chakra is healing him. Everyone quieted down and stared, all of them suddenly hopeful. The red chakra remained for only about 30 seconds, then began to dissipate and was gone. Hinata quickly peeled back the bandages over his chest. Somehow she was not surprised to see the wound completely healed. She was sure that the black liquid was the poison. She quickly and carefully disposed of the infected bandages. She then performed a diagnostic jutsu. Her sudden smile told everyone the good news. The poison is completely gone from his system. As everyone in the room began to shout and celebrate, Kaharu quickly stepped away and left. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto-kun, can you hear me? Naruto-kun. Kushina gently shook her son, but he remained unresponsive. Hinata continued her diagnostic jutsu. It's all right, Kushina, he's just unconscious. His body is exhausted but recovering. He's going to be just fine, he'll be awake again in a few hours. Thank Kami, Kushina said with relief. As people congratulated and hugged her, she noticed something. Where is Kaharu? Kakashi stepped into the hall. It looks like her and the Anbu have gone. Kushina and Jiraiya shared a look. The danger isn't over yet, Jiraiya said. Hinata looked over at him. But it is. Naruto will make a full recovery. I don't think that is the danger Jiraiya is referring to. Shikamaru spoke up. Kushina went up to the Hyuga. Please go to Hiashi and ask him to send every available ninja to the Namikaze estates to guard the Hokage. Stepping back into the room, she went to her son and tossed aside his blankets as she lifted him up into her arms. Kushina-sama, what are you doing? A concerned Haku asked. What I have always done, I am protecting my son from those who would kill him. What are you talking about? Ino asked. Shikamaru answered in a calm, almost bored voice. Danzo and Ryuki are going to try and kill him before he fully recovers. What? Ino shouted, horrified. It's true, Ino, Jiraiya said. They were behind the attack on Naruto. They were planning to make Ryuki Hokage. They have already gone much too far to go back now. Kushina nodded and looked to everyone in the room. Some like Asuma took the news as a matter of fact. Some like Ino and Rock Lee were openly horrified to hear it. I expect my son to be attacked sometime tonight. I am taking him home to guard him. I ask all of you, if you love my son, to come and help me. Every last head nodded. Kushina and her son disappeared and were quickly followed by other Shunshins. XXXXXXXXXXX. Another emergency meeting had been called in Danzo's home. Unlike the first, this one had not been carefully orchestrated and planned. You're absolutely sure of this? Danzo demanded. Kaharu nodded. Hinata seemed sure, and I can't believe she could be wrong about it. Ryuki sent Danzo a savage look. Now what? Danzo still seemed completely calm. We have no choice, we must kill him tonight. What? Michio was the only one at the table who looked panicked. We can't do that. Everyone will know if we move openly. Danzo frowned slightly. There is no avoiding that now. The bulk of the Anbu and ninja of this village remain loyal to him. If he recovers, we will be crushed. So much for your worthless guarantees. Ryuki said angrily. But you're right. The die is cast. He stood up. I'll begin assembling my clan. Danzo nodded. I will issue an order for all Anbu to remain confined to headquarters for the night. I will also arrange a communications blackout. He too stood up. Wait, Michio cried out. What are you going to do? Ryuki sent him a hard look. We are going to kill Naruto and everyone who supports him. That isn't what we agreed to. Michio said. The situation has changed. Ryuki answered flatly. We must alter our plans to meet the new reality. Michio stared at him. Just how many people are you planning to kill? Ryuki faced him with hard look. We have to purge every serious threat to the new order. Namikaze, Uzumaki, Nara, Sarutobi, and, he hesitated a second but continued. Momochi are all in the way. Hyuga and Inuzuka may have to go too, but I have some hope they may be reasonable once Naruto is dead and gone. Hinata will have to go as well. Oh Kami, Michio whispered. This is not what I wanted. I joined you to help protect the village from the Kyuubi's pawn. But I never wanted this. It's past time to worry about what you want or don't want. Ryuki said flatly. This is not a plot anymore, this is not just talk, we have seized power. What do you think Naruto and that bitch of a mother of his will do to us? He flashed a hand across his throat. This is a war now. We win or we die, those are the only options. Michio shook his head. I want no part of this. I didn't join you to begin a civil war. That is unfortunate. Danzo performed a quick jutsu and Michio found himself paralyzed. We could have used you. Unfortunately, as the Hokage stated, this is a war. He took out a kunai and approached the helpless Michio. You are either with us or you are against us. Without ceremony, Danzo cut the man's throat. It was to be only the first death of many that night. XXXXXXXXXXX. Misaki grabbed onto him and wept. Please Shinzo, come with us. You don't have to stay, your sons need you. Shinzo held her and tried to comfort her as best he could. I am very sorry, but Naruto is my Hokage, and more than that he is my blood kin. My duty is to protect him no matter what. You and Aoi go take the babies to the Hyuga mansion, you'll be safe there. Misaki stared up at him. She then leaned up and gave him a sudden desperate kiss. You're a fool, but I love you. He smiled at her. I love you too, if only a bit. Misaki and Aoi both left, each with her son in her arms. Shinzo looked at Anko, who was 5 months pregnant. You should be going too. She grinned. You want to try and make me? Damn it, Anko, what about our child? I'm thinking about our baby. With a mom like me, you know the poor kid is going to need a father around. He was going to argue, so she cut him off with a long kiss. Listen, you baka, I love you in no way, and I leaving your side when you need me. And no matter how he argued, he could not change her mind. XXXXXXXXXX. Kushina came to a sudden stop when she saw her little daughter in the red and black battle suit she wore to the academy. The girl had her sword and equipment on. Alyssa, Kushina said sharply. I told you to get ready to go to the Hyuga mansion with Hinata. Nisan needs my help, her little daughter said with a firm and serious voice. I'm a ninja and I'm going to fight to protect my brother. Kushina looked down at the little girl who was standing there so determined and so serious. She was proud and sad all at once. She knelt down and gave her little daughter a hug. My little one, your heart is strong and brave. You will be a fine ninja one day. She kissed Elisa's cheek and made a simple hand sign behind her back. The girl's eyes fluttered and she fell asleep in her mother's arms. But not yet, my little one, not yet. XXXXXXXXXX. Hinata leaned down and pressed her lips to his. Forgive me, Naruto-kun, forgive me for abandoning you like this. You're not abandoning anyone, Hinata. Shizune said firmly. Neji and I will be here to keep an eye on him no matter what. You know that Naruto would not want you or the baby to be in danger. Neji said. It will be all right, Hinata. She nodded and kissed his lips again. I will be with you again soon, my love. XXXXXXXXXXX. Before coming to the mansion, Kiba had stopped by his home. His mother, his older sister, and a dozen other Inuzuka were present with all their accompanying dogs. There was a mass of people both in the mansion and outside of it. Through the crowd he found a certain someone. You ready for this, Tayuya? I guess, it's not my first war, remember? It's not my first either. Kiba said proudly. You know, anything might happen tonight. There's no guarantee we'll live to see tomorrow. Makes you really appreciate being alive. Tayuya grinned at him. You want to have sex? Kiba nodded eagerly. Yes, please. He grabbed her hand and they headed upstairs to find an empty bedroom. XXXXXXXXXX. Tenzo returned with 30 other ninja behind him, all of them in Anbu masks. Kakashi looked at their numbers and frowned beneath his own mask. Is this all you could get? Tenzo nodded. I'm afraid so. Danzo has put out an order restricting all Anbu to headquarters. Hayate said beneath his mouse mask. A beautiful purple-haired ninja draped an arm around his shoulders. Most of the Anbu decided to obey what they see as a lawful order. Yugao said. Ibiki laughed. It's funny how most Anbu have the guts to do anything but break orders. Kakashi sighed. He'd hoped to bring most of the Anbu over. All of you remove your masks. We'll definitely be attacked by rude agents. We don't want you getting killed by our side by mistake. XXXXXXXXXX. Ino quietly approached Choji and took a deep breath. Ah, Choji-kun. He looked over to his girlfriend and smiled at her. Yes, Ino-chan. Ah, well, I've been thinking. This is a serious situation and anything could happen and I would hate to die with any regrets. She stood very close to him and smiled shyly. You know that thing you've always wanted to do. Choji suddenly smiled. Oh, you mean eat beef dipped in chocolate? Ino's left eye suddenly began to twitch violently. No, Choji, isn't there something you've been wanting to do with me? You know, the two of us, alone. And suddenly Choji's whole face lit up with excitement. Ino-chan, you're finally going to let me teach you how to cook. Ino stared up at him. Ow. Choji rubbed the top of his head. You baka, I'm talking about having sex. Ino yelled at him. Conversation all around them halted and people were looking at her trying not to laugh. Oh, the hell with it. Ino reached out and grabbed Choji's sleeve as she headed for the stairs. Where are we going, Ino-chan? Guess, she said sharply. XXXXXXXXXX. As he watched his two former students go, Asuma looked over to Kurenai and grinned. You know, Kurenai, anything could happen tonight. She returned his smile and took his hand. And it would be a real shame to have any regrets. Soon they too were headed upstairs. XXXXXXXXXX. Gabriella. The girl turned round. Yes, Kushina-sensei. Kushina approached her student and spoke quietly. Gabriella, you know that we are all but certain to be attacked by the Uchiha clan. I know I can trust you, but I also know how strong family loyalties can be. If you want to leave and avoid all of this, I will not think less of you. Gabriella looked at her teacher with great surprise. I would think less of me. My father asked me not too long ago where my loyalty was. She touched the Hittite around her neck. I told him it was here. I am a Leaf Nin. I swore an oath to serve the village and my Hokage. Anyone who attacks my Hokage is my enemy, no matter who he might be. Kushina nodded, grateful for the loyalty, and sympathetic knowing how hard this would be. XXXXXXXXXX. Tamari grabbed Shikamaru's arm and began dragging him towards the stairs. Come on, lazy, we've got some time before the killing starts. You want to do that now? Shikamaru said, not believing it. She gave him a big smile. What, can you think of a better time? You know I need to save some energy for the fighting. Tamari laughed. Fine, I'll do all the work. XXXXXXXXXX. It was approaching 6 in the morning, the sun would be up in less than an hour. If it was going to come, it would have to be soon. The Inuzuka dogs began barking. Jiraiya materialized right beside her. They're on their way. How many? Kushina asked. Maybe about 300 total. Jiraiya shook his head. I think every last root member and every Uchiha that can use the Sharingan is coming at us. They had a total of about 200 ninja, many of them from the clans. This was going to be a very bloody fight. I'm glad there are so many of them, Kushina said. You are. She nodded. I have a lot of anger to work off. The Hyuga shouted out the alarm and everyone readied themselves. A moment later, Kushina felt her left arm tingle. She looked at it. She was not surprised to see nearly every leaf on her special tattoo turn black. People were crossing over every section of the outer fence. Very quickly the enemy came into sight. They did not call for surrender nor did they offer terms. Everyone on both sides knew this was a fight to the death. They never pay attention to the signs. Kushina thought. The signs told the whole world that trespassers would be killed. And they always are. She pulled out her katana and screamed. For the Hokage. And with that the killing and the dying began.